everyone to the Total Party Podcast. It's me, Zero, here with.
Rye.
Wait, I'm Drago.
Uh, and welcome to our podcast where we discuss our top 10 Rider series. Uh, Vashi, we thought was going to be joining us, but we're not sure where he is. He seems to be busy. So we'll be proceeding without him. Uh, so we'll be going from 10 to 1 here. Why don't I start us off? My number 10 is going to be. And okay, first off, my list is incredibly wishy washy. And so, like, any two that I put next to each other could probably just be swapped. It was really hard to put them in a specific order. So, my number 10 is going to be Kamen Rider Kuga.
Oh man, this is gonna be great.
Kuga,
We're gonna get so much hate, but you know what? Kuga's not that high on mine either. But that's because, like yours can like switch places. My list is literally okay. Here's a list of 8 shows. Shit, I need 10. Okay, and then the other part is my thing is like okay, I know the first one and two, right? And then it breaks down into like, oh, this is a group of three, this is a group of three, this is a group of three,
right.
type of thing, where it's like they're equally ranked, like their placement doesn't really matter. It's just more like they're here because they fit a specific category of thing. And it's not like I love them that much, but anyway, yeah. So like, there's a lot of important shows that are really low on my list. But go
So,
ahead, your point on it.
so Kuga was the revival of Rider. Uh, my first experience with Rider was with Shinkenger with the Degate crossover, but when I actually decided to get into it, I started with Kuga. It was a little slow to start, but once it picked up, it got really going, and the drama in it is really well done. I think the villains are really excellent execution for their concept. It's a solid show overall. I would
It,
say it is a bit dated though.
Yeah, I was gonna say, one sec. Are we dropping frames like crazy? I think we're still
Uh,
running.
no, I have no drop frames.
Okay, so yeah, YouTube's saying it's poor help, but I think the stream's still going. Sorry, continue.
Uh, yeah, no, that's pretty much it. Kuga is a really solid series. Definitely deserves to be on a top 10 list, but it is a little dated at this point, and does have some faults. But, solid series overall. And if it wasn't on my top 10 list, it would probably get an honorable mention.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, Kuga has like two issues, which is like, one, it didn't really have the production quality to hold up. Like, even Agito holds up much better than Kuga does, visually anyway. But Kuga's still a really interesting show, and it's really well done. And two is like the character, like Kuga wanted to tell a very specific story, right? And so like every single character plays a part to make that story come about. In but the problem then becomes is like none of the characters really stand like if you take them out of Kuga, they're still cool, but it's not like oh shit, I really like this character. Like like Goda is a really cool writer, right? But it's like even then he's like it's baseline. Like you have to be this good or better, right? He's the bar. So it's like he's not bad, but it's like you have to be at least this good to be a decent Kamen Rider. Well, I mean, I guess technically Agito is like that, but like yeah, Kuga, like I yeah, basically its main criticism it's a little dated, but it's still real. So like uh if I had to like pick like one writer and only one writer, right? It kind of be like, okay, what do they want? Do they want a does the person asking this want just a really good story and they don't really give a shit about Kamen Rider? Then I'd say pick Huga. If it had to be like, okay, if they kind of want to be into Rider, or they're on the fence and they might go, check out a second series or whatnot, but they want to kind of know what the formula for Rider is, then I'd say O. Right? But
Yeah,
basically, like Kuga and O's are basically like my number one and two pick.
if someone was
For
looking to get into the franchise, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Kuga as their very first one, but it's still a solid one to watch.
right. So like basically, Kugas are recommend for people who don't mind like slightly less impressive production values, and two is like they just want a show to be good. Like maybe they give a shit about the tokusatsu side, maybe they don't, but like if they're into basically like if they're into superheroes and they want to see like a henshin hero superhero show, give them Kuga. Right, like if they're really not into the superhero or the henching thing, but they really are into characters, I'd say Kiva. But like again, it's like Kuga's still a solid recommend. Jago, your thoughts?
The
Unless you
thing
have
is,
Kuga
Kuga
higher.
is really high up on my list.
Okay, yeah, then we can hold off
Yeah, no,
if it's on your.
I Kuga is one of Drago's top three. I know that. So Zero, why don't you tell us what your number 10 is?
Yeah, so like I said, originally like I put down like the list and I was like, oh shit, this is the list of like all the Heisei because I haven't really seen that much Showa, and I'm not counting 01 because it's not done yet.
Right, I'm
Um,
also not including that and Drive for the same reason.
oh, because you haven't seen it. Okay, fair enough.
Like, I started Drive,
Um,
but I haven't finished it yet, and I haven't seen Ghost at all.
yeah. So basically, my my number 10 is on here because I really like this show. This show is not good. I mean, it's not like it's decent. It just kind of like falls apart
So are
at
we talking about Wizard here?
with yeah, it's basically Wizard, right? So like Wizard was gonna get on this list. Like I can't rank it anywhere higher than 10 because like it's not a good show compared to the other ones. It's just I like Wizard so much because like okay, one like I really if you want to jump in, let's totally whenever cut me. But like for Wizard, I really like magic stuff. So it's like, well, it's a magic themed Kamen Rider, right? It's like imagine Doctor Strange if he was a Kamen Rider, and that's basically Wizard. Um, and so that's great. Two, like, um, Haruto's a really interesting character because like he's really dedicated as a writer and he's really capable, but like he's not a good guy that you find out later on, or at least he didn't start out exactly being squeaky clean. And his whole motivation also it's like he's the final hope. It's like it's really interesting setup. And like Nito shows up a little bit later, and Nito's fucking amazing, right? So like Beast is like way too much fun. So that's the thing with Wizard. It's like it's got really good like plot setup stuff, like really good ideas starting off. It's got really interesting and fun characters. It does basically nothing with any of that, which is like the biggest problem with that.
Right, I
Like
would.
Gaim is a letdown on just pure like this had so much potential. Wizard at least showed a little bit of its potential. It just was harder to all hell.
I would agree that, like, I really like Wizard's first arc, and then I don't care about anything that comes after Phoenix.
Yeah, pretty much. Like basically, if you want to watch anything with Wizard, like just watch Wizard in Magic Land. That's like the best thing Wizard's ever done. Pretty much.
Alright, Drago.
Okay. Wait, about Wizard, I really do. It's in my honorable mentions. I really do like this season. I think Haruto is a simple character. I mean, not saying that he's simple character like he's like Emu or something like that. Like simple to understand. But he starts off as a plain character, and then you just get added layers upon layers on him, which just regurgitate the same thing about how it's not that one incident that gave him hope. It's multiple people had impact in his life that gave him hope, which is the aspect I really love about Wizard. There's some aspects I really don't like, but but the core thematic elements of Wizard is so strong for me that it really strikes as memorable in my head. And especially the action scenes and the direction in that show was really good. Not saying that it
Yeah,
is a perfect show, but I
It,
really did
the
like it.
problem is that it abandons its potential after the first arc.
Yeah, kinda. But I'm not saying. But it's not that I didn't enjoy what came after. As I did. It's that's the thing. Some of the episodes were really. No, I mean I am just gonna admit it. Some of the episodes are bad, but many of the episodes that came after the first arc were really enjoyable. Like the one
Right.
where Beast and his grandma show up.
oh god,
My
that's
favorite
amazing.
episode of Wizard would be the one with the father and the toy.
Oh dude, that's really good too. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that one was really good.
yeah, like Wizard has really like some really solid episodes. And then it has like the middle section is just kind of padded. It sucks. It has like good stuff too, right? Like every single writer is interesting in Wizard. Um, like it had basically the most competent female writer we've had for a long time until like Yua showed up, right? Like she basically takes over Wizard's job by the end of the show, like at the end, right? Um, which is cool. Like so much potential. Again, action is amazing. Like Wizard probably has the best sword fights in all of Rider. It's just like the budget just wasn't there for that show for some of the other stuff. Um, and then like it's like the Gremlin thing is another thing where it's like at first watching it you're like this is kind of annoying, but if you actually watch like rewatch the show or like if you watch it, you know, like if you weren't watching it right? Um, it's a lot better because you can see what the fuck they were going for because like oh he shows up much later and he sticks around for so long and then you get the like final thing is like wait was this even built up because when you watch it week to week it kind of gets stretched out, but if you watch it like in like a marathon or like you know you're trying to get through the season you can see what the fuck they're trying to do with Gremlin. It's still not amazing, but you can notice that it's a lot better. But again, like Phoenix is probably the best thing as villains wise goes in that show. Um, and that's why we keep like saying like shit, like Beast should have like 10 years after, and it's just Phoenix. It would have been amazing.
All
I mean, I
right,
guess it could still happen.
Drago. What's your number 10? Drago, your mic. Okay. Seems like Drago is having audio issues right now. Uh, okay. Well, while Drago figures that out, we'll move on to our number nines and get back to him. So Zero. It's funny you were talking.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, you're number 10. Are you?
Wait, of course, my number 10 it has to be Ben 10.
That was last podcast, Drago.
You missed it.
Okay, okay. I'm just joking. Okay, I'm having a really hard time deciding between Drive and X8. So both of them are in my number 10.
Oh, Drive and Exade.
Yeah.
Like one of them isn't
Because
your number 9.
no, like both of them it's like I have the- I have so much mixed emotions about both these shows that I really like them. I really enjoyed my time with it. But there are some aspects of both the shows that basically prevent it from etching out to reach number 10. From it's just a headache to decide in both of them, so I just included both of them. um, Exade is really good. I really enjoyed like the I think after the first arc when I think where I was only invested in Kiria the most. Dan Kuroto was the one character that kept me highly invested throughout the first 25 episodes of the show, and the way it uses the way some of the shots were filmed, especially when Kiria was, you know, Kiria died in the Christmas. That was really bad. The way they handled it later on the internet, by selling, by making Grave the Firefly joke about Kiria. Uh, but other
I
than
mean,
that,
the shirt wasn't great either. The freaking game over shirt with Kyria getting blown up.
yeah.
Oof.
So I did enjoy a chunk of that. I think like some of the character arcs. The only thing is that there are like the characters that required the most investment from me were uh, the tertiary rider, the fourth rider in a series who was dead for half the season, for most wait yeah half the season, uh, and the villain that stopped being the main villain midway through the show. Yeah, so that's where my feelings about Exade, like basically, eh, basically I really enjoyed it, but it doesn't hit anything. The ones that are 9 and higher, they have a strong thing that continues throughout the season, but like not strong thing continues throughout the season, but like, you know, there's a strong foundation in that show with the main protagonist, which Exade really didn't have. Like I wasn't in Hero and Emu. Emu was interesting later as time progressed. He was developed into a good character, but Hero was literally the most boring, bland character in that show, and I really didn't like him after the fact, like after watching the show, because I realized how much issues I have with that character after I saw Brave and Snipe, the films. And also Exade took 49 episodes and 3 movies to tell its story.
I
And
mean,
that's
is that really a bad thing?
no, it isn't. I don't know. It's a bad and a good thing because they really. I wish if they had taken those 3 movies and kicked out Cronus as the bad guy, like before the, you know, final arc, like added a few 2 more extra episodes, and they could have condensed the Cronus stuff way later, because him coming, like, it's not like he was okay. He was a bit annoying to watch every goddamn time get beaten,
Oh,
and
definitely.
yeah. So I really like Hiroyuki Takami. I really love his music, but that was annoying.
I think
And
I would go so far as to say that X8 has one of the worst final arcs in Rider.
yeah, and that is and the thing is, the final arc doesn't even have strong moments like in build, like where the final arc wasn't like the arc before the final arc wasn't that good, but final arc had so many strong moments that I actually, it made me like the show more as a result, because it bounced back. but but the in X8 it wasn't that, and the final arc of the show technically was after the show was already over. So that's where my major issues lie in that show. uh, Drive, on the other hand, the thing is, the middle section of Drive was a chore to watch, because have Chase getting brainwashed, getting not brainwashed, getting brainwashed, getting not brainwashed, getting brainwashed, and that was annoying. Um, and honestly, I felt like they wasted Kiriko as a character by introducing and Go, and I felt that they should have given her that Go's character arc to Kiriko, because if seriously, Kiriko, in my opinion, would have served the theme of the show better, because she was also a cop, so it would be like a good cop bad cop situation. Go wasn't. He was a photographer, so that didn't land it properly for me. But otherwise, Drive is has really good main character. Shinosuke is amazing. Like I he's really charismatic. He's attractive. He has like a strong personality, which I really like. He had a good character arc in the fact that uh, in the fact about murder mystery of his dad, and he isn't even the one who beats the final villain. That is really that is what I really
Hmm.
liked about that show. And Chase is a really good character, and then the villains are also really good, which makes me the main villains at least with strong personality, which makes me enjoy the show. But my problem with Drive is, yeah, one Go and Kiriko situation where I felt like Kiriko would have served the purpose of the show better, and um, and I feel that what do you call it? Yeah, and I feel a lot of the stuff that Drive also had the same problem like Exade, where a lot of content either is very scattered throughout specials and net movies and stuff.
So I'm only about halfway through Drive myself. And I will say that like when I finish it, it probably will be on my top 10 list after the fact because of how much I'm enjoying it. But I do agree that with Chase becoming a rider, it seems like they took away the one plot point Kiriko had going for her, and now she doesn't contribute as much in the investigations as she used to.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't hate Go. Like the problem with Go is Kiriko exists, or the problem with Kiriko is Go exists. Is like they're both decent characters. It's the problem is their package deal, which diminishes both of them. As for like why Go is a photographer, I think that's just a like throwback to Rider Two being a photographer, right? Um, so it's annoying because like Go has a really interesting. Well, I mean, maybe not interesting, but like he has a decent arc where it's like sins of the father type thing, and that's basically why he's fighting, right? And like Kiriko is just interesting and pretty competent and important to the show. It's just when you put them both together, it's like shit. The show doesn't have enough plot for both of them, and because Go has the belt, he gets more screen time. Therefore, Kiriko gets to do nothing, which sucks. Because I'm like technically it's not Go's fault, right? It's just this is kind of bullshit because like Toei wouldn't or Bandai or whoever or the writer maybe I don't know, just wouldn't or the producers. The point is like they wouldn't allow Kiriko to be a writer, and that's why all this happens. Like it's so stupid, honestly. Um, but yeah, as for Shinosuke, I would agree. Shinosuke is like Drive has problems, but like Shinosuke is not one of them. Like he's actually a really good writer. Like or just a character in general. Like he's got so much personality and like he's really for the most part proactive. He's like really well acted, right? So yeah, like Shinosuke is fucking amazing. You can pretty much watch that damn show just for Shinosuke, honestly. And somehow the connection has become better, so that's good. Also, I realized I put 11 things on my list, so uh, I just took off Amazon's. So Amazon's, I guess, is my honorable mention, especially because Amazon's is kind of its own thing. Like it's not like the other writer shows. Like it's really good, but it's basically it's like com- Amazon's is Kamen Rider Werewolves. Like it might as well just be its own thing, right? It's sort of like Hibiki. It's like it's Rider, but it's different enough that like it's basically its own thing. Like it's just an execution on a concept. It's like what if Rider was morally gray and we actually continued the morally gray part and like fully explored it? That's Amazon. And like Hibiki is basically like what if Kamen Rider accepts Super Sentai, or more like what if Super Sentai and instead of them always fighting as a group, Like, what if you sent out the individual heroes all over Japan to take care of problems, and then every once in a while, when they fight a monster that one of them couldn't beat individually, they team up, right? At least the first half of the show is kind of like that. So like Hibiki and Amazon's are very different than a regular writer, but they're both good. So like honorable mention, if you want to watch them, they're good. They're pretty different than normal writer though.
Yeah,
Uh,
I also keep Hibiki and Amazon's in the honorable mentions because of those reasons. And Amazon's is I don't know. As I thought about Amazon's over the past few months, Amazon's really has a good underlying message and thematic undertones about hunger, hunger, the food chain, and how we treat food and the ethics of eating other animals and all of that, and then why it is, and it's just taking a commentary of the hypocrisy about how humans treat other animals, and if anybody who is more better predator than us would eventually come about, then we would even turn them into prey. And that's the kind of thematic elements I really enjoyed about the show, and I really, after giving a thought, it really shined through. um, so I really like Amazons, and Hibiki is the same way. Is that I the first if the first half of the show would have continued throughout the season, like the first 30 episodes or so, I would, I think it would break my number five. But because the latter half wasn't as great, it is in my honorable mentions.
I haven't seen Amazon's, but it's on my list.
yeah, basically like the thing with like Amazon's is like, what if you like in Spies where it's like shit's all morally gray, right? Like Amazon even more so. Season two of Amazon's is honestly kind of hit or miss, but like the first season's solid. The movie's really good. Um, and Hibiki is more like a drama, honestly. Like Hibiki is interesting. Basically, like if you're having a rough time, watch Hibiki. Right? It's a show basically about like healing and growing and stuff like that. It's really nice. It's not the standard writer formula. Whereas Amazon's is like we're gonna use the standard writer formula kind of, um, just to explore much broader concepts. Um, it's a lot darker, but honestly, even if you can't stick around Amazon's for that, just stick around because of the Extermination Squad because they're such good characters.
All right. Moving on to our number nines. Uh, so, uh, Zero, you were mentioning how uh, Kuga didn't have as good production quality as Agito did. And it's funny you mention that because my number nine is Agito, which not I don't have a whole lot to say about it, but basically, while the mystery aspect of the show didn't have a good payoff, I really liked the cast for the show, and I really enjoyed uh, the dynamic between Agito and G3.
I would agree. Like honestly, Agito is on my list, but yeah, Agito. Honestly, just watch Agito for how amazingly it can pretty much. Agito is like three writer shows at once, and somehow it works for the most part. And yeah, like the Akatsuki, yeah, basically that mystery is like it's built up way too much to be basically not that important. I mean it's important, but it's not like as shocking of a reveal as they want it to be because it's like, well, duh, it's a writer's show. What do you expect? Right? But like Agito's got like really interesting concepts, right? Like Agito is pretty much like Kamen Rider X Men, pretty much. I mean, it
You know
is.
what? You know what?
Yeah.
There's something
So
there.
I think five would fit the bill more, but
well, I meant more the powers, not the character dynamic.
So, Zero, what's your number nine?
Yeah. So even though I haven't finished the show, but I feel like, well, one, my list was a little short, but honestly, this has to be on the list somewhere because like we can't just stack it full of just Heisei shows. So like for I've seen like 14 episodes or so of the original Kamen Rider show,
Oh,
and yeah, it's interesting. Like honestly, it's kind of refreshing to go back to see, like, yeah, this is Ishinomori's original idea. This is like what Rider was, and it's like it's so interesting because it's basically just like evil organi like describe like it's evil organization being fought by one dude, and it's like, well, duh, that's like every Rider, but like it's never more been that thing, uh, unless you watch the original. Like honestly, like the second episode of the original show, I think the idea in that episode is so good. Like you could just make your own fucking movie out of that, right? And it's like, yeah, that pretty much just sold me because it's like, well, yeah, the effects are janky and they don't really have choreography or any of that, and they're kind of just barely figuring it out. But it's like, no, they were really trying to go after ideas where it's like, yeah, like this is a fucking piece of shit evil organization. And it's like they show up and they destroy people's lives, right? And it's like you have to see the gravity of that. And like as I mean, definitely the top writer shows that we have, like the types that I like is like, well, there's writer stuff going on, but guess what? The rest of the world still exists, right? And it's like if when you show writer stuff impacting real human beings, I always enjoy that a little bit more. And it's like it's interesting, and it's like, yeah, it's not as amazing uh, as that all the time, but it's still got like, for being the original show, it's still got really good ideas. I mean, it doesn't really have the budget or the nuance you'd expect to pull those ideas off properly, but like there's still a lot there, and it's still nice to just go back and watch the original because it's like, well, it's a show from like what is it, like 45 years, maybe 50 almost at this point, but it still is impressive enough to hold up. At least as like an origin show. Like you can't fully skip it. Like at least watch a couple episodes of the.
I have seen like about 50 at this point, and I'm still going through. And yeah, it is my number nine.
uh,
So Jagger, what do you like?
Okay, the concept of like riders being beings where like the shouldering the pain of the world on like and like from they might bring smiles to other people, but inside they are suffering, and the idea of like they're no longer being human, and using the ideas or using that you are a defect from an organization, so you will spend your life fighting against that organization so you can do some good. That core idea of Kamen Rider is so strong in the first season, that the first show, that it does make it really enjoyable, like it does make it stand out a lot. and and the fact that I know that the episodes aren't all really good because there are 95 of them, and I have still not finished the entire show, but I've seen enough to say that I have genuinely enjoyed a lot of episodes that have come in that season, with how they use directing, editing, even back in the time, that I can appreciate about the show. And the stunt performance and everything else is also really good. And in the first, I think the actor himself did it for a while as well, before he had an accident and someone else had to replace him. But I really like I I do like Takeshi Hongo, but I also like Hayato Ichimonji. How I forgot how to say his name.
Yeah, no, that was correct.
Okay, so I really like both of these characters, and they bring a lot to the table, and especially the supporting characters are also really good. That is why like it is in my number nine.
And I
Yeah, I mean,
definitely and like I watched the first episode out of curiosity, and I definitely walked away going like I could actually sit down and watch this if I had the time.
yeah. Honestly, it's kind of amazing, like how good the concepts in that show are, because like, okay, yeah, some stuff just shows up for homage, but like honestly, some of the plot lines are so good that like you see it over and over in the shows. It's because like, yeah, the first show did these plot lines, and they were so good that like later shows keep doing them because that's how good Ishinomori's idea was to begin with, right? Like, I mean, if I say it, it'd be spoilers for the episodes and stuff, but like it's pretty amazing. And it's also interesting that like um every time later on that you see Rider 1 and 2 is like they're all buddy buddy for the most part, but like in the original show, they're not super always on point, right? Like they kind of disagree at points. I mean, the part where I'm at, Ichimonji just showed up, but Drago, you've seen like 50 or so. So does that happen, or at least that's what I've heard? It's like I mean, they actually have disagreements and stuff, and they actually do stuff differently because like later on, every time you see them, they're pretty much almost identical. Like they might as well just be one suit. But like in the original, they're actually different characters, right?
Yeah, they are. Like the worldview of Takashi Hongo and Hato Ichimonji is widely different from each other, so that they actually feel like different characters. Even if their suits aren't all that different, and that is where like I that's where I think that I think Shotaro Ishinomori really gave it a thought to how to portray each characters and how their relationship with the side characters are also different. Like Takeshi Hongo is a bit distant. He's a bit more reserved, and he's a bit more he sinks in his own pain, while Hayato Ichimonji is a lot more open. I mean the core idea still carries over, but like he's a bit more open, he's a bit more interpersonal, and that he has better relationship with the side characters, in my opinion, at least at so far which I've seen. Maybe and that's what I really enjoy about Kamen Rider.
I mean, honestly, it's kind of amazing how well Ichimonji fits into the group, considering he was never supposed to be there, right? Like if Fujiro, who was Takeshi's, I mean, like Hongo Takeshi's actor, like if he was never injured, like Rider 2 would not have to be a thing, right? But like
We wouldn't have gotten henshin poses,
yeah, I mean, like Rider would have died because like Rider wasn't popular until Rider 2 showed up and
and we
started doing
got
the
the
henshin
henshin
pose.
poses.
Yeah, pretty much right. And we only got that is because Rider 2 didn't have his license because originally, like Hongo basically is like he's powered by wind. That's why his like belt has the turbine fan thing on it. And so he has to ride his bike really fast or fall or whatever. Basically, he has the wind to power him, right? And so like he doesn't need a henshin pose. But like Ichimonji didn't have his life or like his actor. So like well he has to do something to get the wind flowing, and that's what the original henshin poses are, right? It's just to generate wind pressure to henshin, pretty much. Um, yeah, but it's kind of amazing, like how well these characters work together, considering they were like never supposed to be. Like I guess it's sort of like the Nito thing in Wizard, where it's like Nito was never really supposed to be part of the show, but like Nito's such a good character. But unlike Ichimonji, who they work into the show really well, like Nito's thing is like half of the staff don't want him to be on screen, and the other half actually give storylines, right? Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
All right, so moving on to number 8. Whoops. Uh, mine is actually going to be uh, Kamen Rider X-Aid, and I actually knocked this down a couple after you talked about it, Drago, as you made me realize, like, yeah, whoops. Yeah, there were a few points about X-Aid that brought the whole overall quality of the show down, particularly in the
Yeah,
final arc.
yeah, pretty much. I had it high up too, then Dragon Dog. I had to put it down a little bit.
It's like, yeah,
Mine's
you
a little
know
bit
what?
higher.
This I'm giving this show a bit too much credit. As much as I like it, I like the execution of the video game concept for the most part. Once it got into a cheat war, though, that's where it really started to like drop off for me. Uh, but I do like the storyline for Peridot.
Like Peridot is great. Like that's the thing. Xade's characters are great. Some of its plots, definitely its power ups. Um, yeah, I also have X8, so I might hold off on it. But Drago, if you have,
Not really. I think I said everything I need to say about Exade, except that I really like Parado, which I forgot to mention. I really liked his character arc, and his especially episode. I think it was around episode 41 where Parado's character arc came to a head, and that was a really really strong episode in an otherwise underwhelming arc.
So yeah, that's all I have to say about this. Zero, what's your top 8?
yeah. So my next one would be Agito, and yeah, it's a little bit low, but like I said again, like my list is basically like this is one and this is number two because I couldn't put it as number one because it has flaws, and then there's like group of shows, right? So this is sort of the other group where it's like, oh, these are interesting shows, but then they're kind of like ranked in between. Anyway, so like Agito is the lowest there, but it's the next one where it's like we pretty much talked about Agito. It's like yeah, it's a really interesting show. The mix of like three different storylines and like all the like the writers basically all well the main three writers have like really different things going on. Like just just the balance of like the three different storylines and like the whole X-Men thing going on is really interesting. Um, the G3 unit is pretty interesting, honestly. Um, also, like boiling down like standard writer formulas so early on to pretty much like kickstart the Hazer writer. I guess like standard of shows until like uh, I guess decade definitely double broke it and put a new paradigm. But uh, at that point, like yeah, it's amazing how well they got it established so early on. I mean, like realistically, like Ryuki fully broke the mold, but like Agito did a pretty good job of like capturing or at least like building a stable foundation that Agito started. I mean, Kuga started. Um, as for the show itself, like it's honestly it's a lot more watchable. Like it's aged fairly well compared to Kuga. Kuga, like you can tell the show didn't have a lot of budget. Well, for the months. Whereas Agito, it's like no, it actually looks pretty deep still. I mean, like maybe some of the like more dramery stuff with the plot is a little dated, right? And like maybe some of the clothes and stuff, but like otherwise, who cares? It looks perfectly fine. Like you could still watch it. It's a decent show. Like Akito, as a show, it'd be like, you know what? I want to watch a writer's show. Is Agito worth watching? Yeah, it's worth watching. Just give it a watch. It's perfectly fine. It gets maybe a bit too like comedy focused 2/3 of the way through for a couple of run of episodes, but then it like reins itself back. And yeah, the mystery that like Katsuki mystery is like super not worth like forget that. Don't even worry about that shit and you'll be fine.
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
And yeah, and that's where my problem with Agito lies, the mystery aspect, which was keeping me engaged, and that just dropped the ball so hard. And the fact that it was three different shows melded into one, but I was only interested in one show, and that was about G3.
Oh yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean like
I mean,
G3
like
is really
G3
good.
is really good.
Gills
Gills,
Gills is
Gills.
so interesting because there's like nothing like Gills pretty much ever again. I mean like maybe you
I mean,
can
like
say
maybe.
Amazon is the continuation of the Gill style, but like besides Amazon, like writers never done
There's never
Gills.
done.
Okay, okay, I think I like Gills as a concept, but I really find the character and everything surrounding him so annoying as heck to watch. Because I really don't like fridging in media, like as far as
Oh god, yeah.
it's
Oh,
concerned.
oh god.
Yeah, and Jills was a victim of the worst kind, and that made it was very annoying for me, at least at that point. Kino was cool. I really like Kino. He was a
Oh
really
dude,
solid
everybody's like
character, but but he sadly, if you have seen Go Rider, you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ghost Rider gives
Ghost
it a
Rider
B. I mean Agito gives it. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, so the ultimately Hikawa was the only character I was interested in. So it it's I don't like I wanted to like this show. I liked Suichi to a certain point, but after the focus was too much on comedy, really kind of I my interest in the character waned. So Hikawa was the only
Oh
thing
yeah.
that was keeping me going. So that really didn't. So the show ultimately didn't grip me as much as other shows have.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing I would say is Agito's like Agito has like three main writers. Its main writer, like Kamen Rider Agito, is honestly the least interesting of the bunch, which is kind of sad. But like it has to be said,
Maybe as
right?
a
And
writer, but as a person, he's not the least interesting. Actually, you know what? Never mind. He is the least interesting. He's just not
yeah, I mean,
boring.
right. Like he's not bad. It's just like surrounded by everyone else in Agito, he's a little too like he's supposed to be the simpleton, the grounding rock. Like he's like oh the simple stable guy that you can count on. And like yeah, with all the crazy shit that's going on in Agito, like it makes sense, but like it doesn't make him all that memorable. Like Suichi is good, but it's like okay, he's the okay writer. Like that's what you could say. He's not bad. He's not great. He's just the okay one. As for like honestly, like the reason I really like Gills is like maybe like halfway or 2/3 of the way through. Like Gills runs into these other people with powers, and that's such a good arc. Whereas like they get entangled with Gills, and then they think Gills died, and they kind of do some like messed up shit in response. And then Gills like they figure out that Gills is alive, and they're like, "Oh fuck, it crossed the line." And like that arc, honestly, is like so amazing, and that kind of like just pretty much just justifies Gills' existence, sort of. But yeah, honestly, like like Gills is kind of like well, I'm not gonna say hit or miss. Like most people like him. It's just like I'm not sure he would have been okay to like hedge a whole show up.
All right. So, Drago, what's your number 8?
Cyborg 009. Oh so you just broke.
God damn
you
it.
you missed it. That should have been 9.
That's the joke.
Yeah. Nice. But
Okay, Cyborg 009 is Kamen Rider enough to put it at number 8. I'm just gonna say. uh,
I mean, it's made by Ishinomori. So.
I know. Okay, number 8 is Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. Okay, yeah, it's an American
Oh,
adaptation, but it's really good.
Okay, I wasn't
uh,
prepared for that, so I'm just gonna
yeah,
use
I
a
was not.
Kuga image for it, or sorry, a Ryuki image for it. I was looking at Kuga when I said that.
Fair enough. Maybe like flip the image. Oh, I mean,
Uh,
not sure if you can edit it on the fly because like if you mention Ryuki, it's like, well, it's Ryuki again. It's like, well,
Actually, hold on.
uh,
Yeah, I got a better idea. So yeah, go on and tell us why you like Dragon Knight.
Okay, Dragon Knight. Okay, my Dragon Knight. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna discard anything that I have to say about Ryuki, but okay, leave it at that. Dragon Knight is a show that I honestly that was my first Kamen Rider show that I ever saw. I have seen Tokusatsu before that because it since I live in Asia, Tokusatsu basically shows up on TV whenever they get the rights. So I had seen Tokusatsu before that. So but Dragon Knight was the thing that got me hooked into Kamen Rider. It does the rider formula so well. Like the creators understand. Like it's not your standard rider formula, but the creators understood like how riders work in Japan. And it was not like Masked Rider where like the creators completely missed the point. But here, because since the people who were making the show were huge fans of the show, and that and combined with the excellent directing of action scenes, especially the out of suit combat and its own original footage that they made with very minimal use of Ryuki footage. The fight scenes have been really good. It even won Daytime Emmy Award for its choreography. Uh, so like this fight scenes were really good, and even the plot, like the uh, where like the main character of Kit, while the first few episodes doesn't have a really good acting, the main character of Kit is really I really enjoyed more than Shinji because Shinji I felt was neither a proactive writer neither a reactive writer. Uh, so this Kit is is does have he is reactive to certain events. Like he uses his head, and then the and okay. So when the guy from I forgot his name in the stingray fish. Okay, Raya. Yeah, Raya of the
oh,
Dragon
Tezuka.
Knight. Yeah, Tezuka and Tezuka's adaptation of like the character in Dragon Knight when he passed away like by the so when he passed away by one of the when he was killed by one of the Kamen Riders, the main character didn't forgive him, and he did his first kill in that show, basically. Uh, so which made which made his journey like so far he hadn't done that, and then so when you that happens, it will happen after a major event after you connected with the characters a lot, and the way they incorporate all 13 writers into the show was really interesting, and the main villain especially. Okay, the charis you know how Evolved is very charismatic as a character.
Yes.
Take that character without all the pitfalls, and that is
So
General
Stark.
Xaviax. Yeah, so he is basically Bloodstark, but like how he manipulates people, and also the fact that his character is consistent and his ego is explained. which makes which makes him my absolute favorite villain in Kamen Rider. General Zaviax and the guy who plays the general, he is the guy who plays the main villain. He is amazing. Like the actor is chewing the steams out basically, in a good way. And I really liked that, and I really liked him as a character. The last arc, it depends on whom you ask, is somewhat hit or miss, but even then, like they continued the show in a good direction, and the ending was pretty good. the the only place it falls flat for me is that they had 3 clip shows, and the show didn't have budget, and that's where like my issues lie with it. But otherwise, it's good. I would 100% recommend to anyone who wants to watch the show. But just the first few episodes don't have really good acting. That's the only downfall of that.
I've been meaning to get around to it. I just haven't.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it sounds like a really good adaptation, which is insanely rare for tokusatsu adaptations. So that's good, especially considering this was supposed to be like their first foray, because they're not like a established like tokusatsu adaptation company like Saban is, right? So
They made Guyver, so
yeah.
Guyfer, I think.
Oh wow, they made Guyford too. I mean, like that's impressive. But I meant more. Wait, okay. Guyver and Guyford are like two different tokusatsu heroes, but um,
I think my head is just in the wrong.
it's point is they did a fairly good job. As for like Shinji and whatnot, like Ryuk is pretty high up on my list, so we'll get to why he's important. But it sounds like the main writer for or the main character for Dragon Knight did exactly what he needed to do um, in that show, which is good, and that's probably why he worked so much better. But like personally, I've like Shinji works in whatever. I'll hold off for why I think he works
Yeah, we can talk about
for
Ryuki
later.
later. But for
Yeah.
now, Zero. A couple years ago,
Yep.
we disagreed on the quality of Gaim, uh, because I
Yep.
enjoyed Gaim, and I feel like it had a lot of good concepts to it, and I liked the way its story evolved as the show went on to match the setting. And then Build came out and did all of those things better, and so Build is my number seven.
Nice, nice.
uh,
I was gonna say the funniest thing about Gaim is like, dude, that I hated that show so much I almost quit all of Writer. Or like Tokusatsu in general, basically Writer. But the point is, at this point, it's like, yeah, it exists. I don't care. So like, I have like zero anger. It's like whatever. It's not even worth my
I
time.
I think Gaim is
Like
better than you give it credit for, but
no, I feel like it probably is, but I also feel like I could probably rewrite that fucking show to actually be what it should be. But I'm like, that's too much effort for this show, and I don't care. But Build,
Build, what made me ultimately decide to put it above X8 is that I like Build's cast more. I like more of its characters. I like their character interactions a lot better. And overall, the story is a lot more solid and consistent with itself, except for Evolt. And when that's the
that's a
biggest, when that like when I can just point at one problem and say that's the biggest problem of the show and everything else isn't that bad, like I don't think you have a very bad show there.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I like the X8 characters more than the Build cast, but the Build cast is still pretty solid. I think my problem always becomes is like if I see like giant glaring like, hey, why are you wasting this golden opportunity for these characters? and that like consistently happens, it pisses me off more, and that's probably why uh, Build isn't even on my list. Like Build is a decent show, but like Build drops like a shit ton of really good plot points, but it keeps characters around to stand around and do nothing. And I'm not just talking about Sawa. There's like quite a few characters who just like stay there doing nothing, and that's why Build's not that good. Or for my list, right? But like otherwise, like it's really solid. Like if this list was longer, Build would definitely be on. But Drago's here, so I'm gonna let him talk about how much he loves Build.
Not now.
Okay, we'll get to that later
Uh,
then.
oh, nice.
So Zero, what's your number 7?
Yeah, my number 7 is Kuga, and I think we've all like pretty much talked a shit ton about Kuga. And so like, yeah, the only reason honestly it's this low is because like it's really solid. It's just most of the stuff on top is like I like the characters more, and they kind of hold up a little bit better. Like Kuga, like the production quality kind of holds it back, honestly. And like I'm I'm perfectly fine with it. God damn it! I watched the original show and I was pretty with it. Also, like the original Kamen Rider has like really interesting cinematography. Um, but as for Kuga, like Godai is a really good fucking writer, right? And like Kuga does something amazing, which is like its power scaling and its world building is so damn consistent. Like it's insane how good it is. Right? Like it is literally like that show came out like 21 shows ago or 20 shows ago if we're turning zero or 21, whatever, right? Like nothing before or since. Well, I don't know. Maybe Showa held up. I don't know. But the point is like probably not from what I've seen. But um Kuga is so damn amazing for like how well like the threats feel real, the countermeasures feel real, and then the problems with using the countermeasures feel real, and then the gravity. I mean, like they bring up points. They don't really explore it too much, but they do bring up the fact is like, well, shit. Now we've made these weapons. The monsters are gone, but we've created the tech for these weapons to still stick around, and we militarize the police basically. And it's like these are like ethical problems we're gonna have to deal with. Uh, but at least like the show doesn't have time to deal with that because that's like much later and the show can just end. But at least they're like smart enough to think about that stuff like that could happen. And honestly, like anything with remembered names, but I'm so bad at like the female scientist, the lead female scientist in Kuga, like her plot line's amazing, right? Like she's such an interesting character. I mean, and we've had like other characters like her. I mean, like she did such a good job that we like keep having these like sciencey side characters, right? Like so, testament for that. I mean, she did such a good job. But the problem is like Kuga's cast, they're really good, but they're not like super memorable. Like you don't want to see more than. I mean, like you kind of do, but it's more like, well, here's another Kuga story. It's like, well, that's interesting. But it's not like, oh, I just want to see a movie with these guys. And it's like, well, not so much, right? And that's what kind of holds it back. Like it doesn't have the flavor. Like that's the thing. Like Agito, for like it doesn't. It's not as good as Kuga for being like, it's not as properly like the power scaling is kind of a little bit all over the place, and the world building is not super great, but it's still kind of there. But the one thing Agito has is like character, right? Like Like you could watch a show with just the G3. You could watch maybe a movie with just right? And like Suichi, it takes him like the full show to fully figure out what the hell his backstory and stuff is. But like by the end of the show, you're like, okay, I could see another season of Agito for where Suichi ended up. Right? Like he could be like the new Professor X, I guess, sort of for this world. It could be interesting. Whereas like Kuga is like, yeah, these guys were cool, but it's like they're good for the story that they're in. They're not really super interesting otherwise. Like they're good characters. Like I like the corner dude. Like he's great. Um, but like if like Kuga feels like there's like a piece missing. For as great as it is, it feels like there's something slightly missing in Kuga.
All right, Drago, number 7.
Keitai Sosakan 7.
Okay, dude, that show is fucking amazing.
I don't know what that
It
one is.
it's the walking cell phone. Have you seen like that little like silver cell phone guy? He's like it's basically like a flip phone with like arms and legs. Have you seen that?
No.
Okay, it's like a drama. Like it's technically tokusatsu because it uses special effects, but it's basically like they're kind of like you know how in like Ghost in a Shell they're kind of like the cyber investigation squad. Yeah, basically imagine that except instead of like cyborgs, these guys just focus on like AI crimes or like cyber crimes and stuff. It's got like a ton of well, maybe not a ton, but it's got like really good actors and um, it's got like Ryuki actors. Interesting enough, like Ren is like the secondary main character in that show.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and then like Shinji's boss used to basically be the main character until like well it's not a spoiler he gets taken out in the first episode which sets up like this new kid to be the main character like it's a really good like drama like coming of age type of show um there's like I do love how like over the top that show kind of goes though at times where it's like no we're going into like full drama land but like crazy batshit over the top drama land at times just for the plot like it's really wholesome just fucking watch the damn show.
I'll give it a look sometime. But getting back on topic, what's your number 7, Drago?
I was gonna go with Ultra 7, but I have not seen that show.
I've seen like
uh,
Ultra 7X and that's really solid.
okay, my number 7 would be. I'm just a bit confused whether should I put numbers stronger at 7 or O's at 7.
Hmm. I haven't
Uh,
seen Stronger, but I do like
I haven't seen
O's.
Stronger, but I do like those. So wait, okay, Stronger is the seventh Kamen Rider. So let's go with Stronger first then, because
Fair enough.
okay, O's and Stronger both are interchangeable for me. Because I really goddamn enjoy both those shows. Stronger is like okay, Stronger has two things going for it. Like one is Shigeru Joe, and second is Yuriko Misaki. Uh, Stronger and Electrowave Human Tackle. I don't care what anybody says. Tackle is a Kamen Rider because she fits the bill for everything else. Uh, but but yeah, I really like both those characters because their chemistry on screen is excellent. They have really good personality. Uh, Shigeru is like Tendo before Tendo. Like he is very cocky. He is very, you know, he's having fun being a superhero, and that I really enjoyed. And his personality carries throughout the whole show. And the actor who plays Nanba also plays a villain here called Mr. Titan, and he is really really good. Like as an actor and how he portrays the character, and the confrontation between Shigeru and Mr. Titan was really well established. It is a really good show. I highly implore you to watch it. And and the funny thing is that Shigeru becomes a rider. He basically walks into the headquarters and like, turn me into a cyborg, I'll join you. And then and then they were like, okay, this guy's willingly turning himself in. So they turn him into a cyborg, and he immediately turns on them and starts fighting them. And that was like, they're voluntarily turning us into cyborg by going to the main villain's headquarters and then fighting them right there is one of the best things I've seen in Kamen Rider history. Yeah, so watch Stronger. Stronger is really good. And yeah, my number six being O's. Uh, O's is one of my favorite. Is really good. Like I really enjoy AG and Unk so goddamn much, because they are like their chemistry and how they portray, how the actors, how they portray the characters. Ryosuke Miura doing his excellent job as Ankh, and then Shu Watanabe as AG. Their chemistry is excellent, and even both the births are very good. I prefer Date over Goto, but how Goto's character goes from not being like training to be birthed, somebody else being birthed, and then him eventually learning from that guy and turning into birth himself was a really good progression. And I really like all the greed. My The thing is, the only reason why it's lower on my list, otherwise it would have been higher, is that some of the middle section episodes were a chore to watch. And how Date came back, I like that Date came back, but the way he came back, like, okay, I'm done with operation. Let's go continue to fight as Bird. So that was, I felt, was like a bit because they had to change, because the actor was very well liked. Um, he has really good charisma and personality, so I can't even blame them. So that's the relationship between Ankh and AG is one of the best relationships in Kamen Rider that I have seen, and the ending was heartbreaking. I cried so bloody much when I think I was like 14 or 15 when I think I was 14 when I saw O's. Uh, so back then, I and that was one of the most touching moments in Kamen Rider and I really enjoyed the show. And the collectathon in that show is the best collectathon they have done, and nobody has come close to doing that well so far. So yeah, I love O's.
All right. So Zero, what would be your number six?
Um, all right, let's see. I did Kuga. So it's, yeah, Xaid. Xaid's number six. And again, like Xaid is an interesting show. Like honestly, how well like the arcs flow together is really nice. Freaking like Emu and Peridot are great. Like fucking all the cast is great. Um, they sometimes like Nico doesn't get that much to do. Hero doesn't get that much to do, which sucks. Hero's dad definitely doesn't get much to do. Um, but outside from that and the Kronos problem at the end of it just being a little, yeah, basically the cheating over the cheating kind of got a little annoying. Um, and the Emu like tripping over stuff, which is always annoying. Um, but the show definitely like grows on you, and like the characters like reveal layers that they're like not super goody two shoes, or like they've been like secretly hiding this or planning this or secretly investigating this, or like, yeah, this guy's kind of a jerk, but at least like once you know his backstory pretty decent, especially like, but that also kind of brings up the problem of X8 where it's like you need so much extra material kind of because like there's so much shit going on in X8 that is split up over movies and like specials and stuff, which is kind of, but for the show itself, right, it's got like such good, like X8 is one of those things where it's like it fucking delivers and it delivers really well. Like it's not amazing arc to arc all the time, but like that show when it fucking gets going, like it's really consistent and like it like continues to get better for the most arc, and then like the Kronos arc kind of pisses away a decent chunk of goodwill. Honestly, you're the hero standing around and moping arc kind of starts that trend, but you know, like Bergamon's fucking great. Poppy's amazing, right? Like Graphite even fucking getting a moment and all that. Like all the characters kind of get a moment. That's kind of amazing, honestly. For as varied as the X8 cast is, it's great. Um, it's like it's just a fun show, right? And that's kind of the thing. Like Kuga is technically perfect. Agito is like Kamen Rider generic but solid. Like X8 is Kamen Rider and fun. You know, so you go from average to better now. And so like starting that off, you know, I would have to put X8. Like it's got problems. Like I feel like Zero One might be a better show once it's all done. But for the most part, like you can't go wrong watching X8. It's still pretty decent. Plus, like some of the fights are really interesting and fun. Um, and like whenever like Emu gets serious, it's great. Like characters have layers to them, right? And yeah, like kind of Dan kind of pretty much just gets away with everything almost. But like the fucker is so damn fun to watch on screen, you can kind of let it slide on.
All right, so my number six is actually going to be Kamen Rider Double. Uh, just as a detective show, or even as like kind of a parody of it almost, it's just a fun show to watch. It has some neat concepts to it, and while not all the plot lines are executed the best, like I just enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, honestly, like Double would have been on my list, but it's like the comedy just starts to really get on my nerves. Like if you took the comedy out for the most part, or at least toned it down, like it'd definitely be a lot higher. Like it's a really competent show. Sort of the focus on hard boiled instead of the theme being family because the show is literally set up to have the theme of family perfectly there is kind of annoying in the comedy. But if you just took those two missteps out, I'd say it'd be a lot higher for me. But like, yeah, I can't fault anyone putting Double on their top 10. It's pretty solid. It's not on mine, but solid. Also, like Philip's an interesting character because that's the thing, right? Like after Philip, you kind of get this run of, well, I guess that's not true. Like technically, the Imagine were like the beginning of the thing where it's like here's wacky sidekicks or side characters or like super not normal people, right? But like Philip's just like, yeah, he's not the sidekick. This is like a main character, right? And like they're super important to the plot. I mean, like I guess the Imagine are too, but like the Imagine are a group, whereas like Philip is just one person, and like seeing his arc is really great. Um, yeah, and like the whole thing with like Philip and Clay Doll, like that's such a good um, Terui's pretty damn solid too. Like as a second, like he's a really good second writer. Like amazing acting, especially for that damn toy sword, making it seem like it weighs like right?
Uh, yeah. And speaking of the Imagine, I really like Deno. I think that the comedy was spot on. Like I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And so Deno is actually going to be my number five.
Same here. But there's also one more show that's gonna be on my number five.
What's your other number five?
555.
Uh, oh,
Oh wait, no.
Nice.
Wait,
So
five is gonna be. Wait, Deno is number four. Five is 555. Yeah. Wait, no. I'm so confused in this one. Okay. Yeah,
you're
Five
the
and
one
Deno
who
are my number
made it.
five.
uh.
Okay.
Fives is
Dragon,
a
did you?
solid one. It's a bit
Yeah, I was gonna
higher
say.
for me, but
Yeah. Well, that's that's the problem of it being me and you on here because I'm like, well, the closer this gets to the top, the more it's just gonna be on the same
no,
page.
you
Uh,
didn't. I don't think you watched our Sentai one we did of this, but we got to number one and we all had the same number one.
oh, that's amazing. What was it? Like, I didn't. I haven't gone back.
Uh,
Was your
Okay. Okay. I think I'll move 555 to number four. So I'll talk about that later. Let's talk about Deno.
okay? Go for it.
Okay. Right.
uh, so
You wanna start?
so Deno does a lot of interesting concepts with how it handles time travel and how time works. That play off really well, and it does the main rider not actually being the hero himself. Like he's letting these demons possess him, and they're the ones fighting for him. Is a really cool concept that was executed incredibly well. I love all the Imagine, especially Siege. Uh, and just like I'd say them trying to shoehorn in a main antagonist for the final arc was a bit of a disappointment because the villain had nothing going for him. But really, like, the show has so many strengths that I don't really care about the weaknesses.
And that's exactly why I like Deno. I really, really enjoyed the. I really enjoyed Takeru Sato's performance as Den-O. Uh, like him acting as all the imagines I've heard from that he because of how he was act because of how taxing it was. He was barred from coming to back to Rider. He was barred from coming back to Rider ever again. But seriously, the guy acts the hell out of so many different characters. That's the testament to how good of an actor he is. And Ryo is also a very good character himself. Like his growth from a weak person to eventually finding strength himself, where his final form is literally him fighting alone rather than relying on the imagines, is a really good like a really good what do you call it character development the for the character. And emergence as a unit is just goddamn great. Like nothing has been nothing have been as good as the imagines as far as a unit of characters go in terms of comedy. The cast of Double has come close because of the how the world works, but uh, Imagines are really really good. The voice actors do their damn best performance, and even the suit actors. So that makes me really enjoy watching the show, and Ultraman Orb's cameo at the end was interesting. Let me just say that. And the last episode, and since this is my second Rider show I have ever seen, and the first one that I saw in Japanese, and I saw this on Facebook. So back when that used to be with, I think that's still a thing. But I saw this on some Facebook group, uh, Facebook page, and then they had all the episode uploaded in like part one, part two, and thoroughly enjoyed this show so much. Like me and my younger brother saw the entire show. I had uh, I had tears at the end of the end of the final episode, where like, I had to say goodbye to these characters, and then I found out there were more movies. But but yeah, uh, so I can't complain about Deno because Deno is just good, and and I'm also nostalgic about that show. So kind of because it was my second Rider show that I saw, and I have a lot of fond memories of it. So yeah, and this kept me in. Oh, sorry. Uh, this show kept me made me watch Kamen Rider. They made me be a fan of Kamen Rider continuously. Um, I think my first exposure to Den-O was a special of Crayon Shin-chan, where he had crossed over with Den-O, and that's how I found out that there's a Kamen Rider. There are other seasons of Kamen Rider that's not Dragon Knight. So yeah, and I really enjoyed Deno as a show because there has never been like the show like that, nor will there ever be, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, like Hibiki is Sentai and Rider format. Deno, uh, well, the train stuff, all that is sort of like Metal Heroes in Rider format, but that all aside, um, yeah, like from what I've seen of Deno, especially in the movies, it seems like a fun concept. Um, I tried watching the show, I couldn't really get into it, but like that's not here nor there. Like, uh, for as many people have gotten into it, say it's really solid, so I'm not really gonna knock it. It's just not really my thing, but it was definitely like from the movies it's a solid enough concept, so that's great. And considering like the Imagine and well, I mean, Deno shows up less, but the Imagine definitely show up more. Is like came off forever ago, and it's still like a good concept they keep using, and it still works. It just speaks how well made that show is. Like, then again, like it's written by well, Deno's writer wrote like a lot of really good stuff. So,
She wrote Amazon's Ryuki Tokyuju and Shinken.
well, Agito also a little bit.
Oh wait, right, I forgot. Yasuko Kobayashi wrote Agito as well.
Yeah, and O's. So yeah, Kobayashi is freaking amazing anyway. So you know, like Dano pretty much put her on the map, I guess. Well, I mean, she was already there, but like definitely like made her like this amazing category of writer. So yeah, props to that, I guess. Considering you guys already gave your number fives, I guess I'll do mine, and that would be Blade, right? And so this is one of those weird things where it's like it could be higher, it could be lower. It's like it's here because like Blade has issues, right? Like it's definitely got issues. Like the Tachibana thing is like the number one thing where it's like, okay, can you stick around to figure out what the fuck Tachibana's deal is? Like originally, I honestly I've never minded the Tachibana plot because I'm like Tachibana's like my favorite character in Blade, so I'm like, yeah, I was already on his side from the get go, so like I didn't really mind that. But like again, as Vashi said, like you have to go like a third into the damn show to figure out what the fuck is going on with Tachibana. So like, yeah, that's I guess an issue. The other thing is like the middle kind of just like does a thing, and then they're like, shit, we have more episodes, so they just redo the same plot again, which is fucking annoying. Like the Mutsuki stuff drags out like way too long in the middle. Like it's good once it like resolves, but it's like they literally just do the same thing twice, which is fucking hell. Um, but Blade has like a really interesting world where it's like it's not connected because this is like early Heisei where the Rider worlds weren't connected. They used to be all separate, but it has this thing where it's like it keeps alluding that like other Rider stuff have happened, right? Like it feels like a very lived in Kamen Rider world. Like Kamen Riders exist, but they're like urban legends and stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, Rider battles have happened, but like most people don't, like they know they might be people like Riders, but nobody's really, like very few people have actually run into them. So it's this weird, interesting, like techno kind of Rider world where it's like, yeah, tech level is high, but it's pretty much the normal world, but like secretly Kamen Riders might be running around doing stuff in the background, like not
I
world
wanted
and
to.
go
Okay,
ahead.
what I was gonna say is that supposedly Files was supposed to be crossing over with Blade. They had planned it everything out, but then they decided not to.
Oh,
Oh man, that would have worked so well,
you could have got a
right?
lot of good character interactions with that.
I mean, there's that, but I'm like, it would have worked because like, okay, what's Blade's thing? Oh, created by this company or like group, like the board, it's foundation, right? Or group of companies, and then like Flies made by Smart Brain. So it's like, well, yeah, it could work. That's the whole like tech thing. Totally makes sense if they had planned to cross it over with Flies, especially because like Flies and Blade kind of had this like next level of humanity or like undead thing going on. So like it actually like weirdly enough they're like very different shows, but like thematically like you could cross them over really easy. Um yeah man, that would have been an interesting fucking world. Right? Um yeah, but Blade, for all its faults, like Kenzaki is like if you had to pick like one dude who embodies like all the qualities of what makes a good like main writer, like the dude with the belt who saves people, like Kenzaki would, right? Like he's
Right.
fucking amazing. Like he doesn't have like the most amazing personality, but like he's super reliable. He's like just a generally good person, likes to help everyone. He's maybe not as much of an everyman or like a regular person with just the belt that like five writers tend to be, but he's still like, hey, this was my job, but you know what? Fuck that. I'm gonna protect people regardless, right? Like I'm not really doing it for money. And it's like, yeah, I have a fucked up childhood, which kind of spurs me on to do stuff, but I'm not gonna let that get me down. Or like, I'm still gonna try to be heroic for the most part. And then it's like, shit, if I have to make an impossible choice of do I do this bad thing or do I do that bad thing, I'm gonna do the Kamen Rider thing and make a third option. And like he is the embodiment of that. Like even if it costs him a shit ton, like it costs him a lot. And but like he does it anyway. And so that's what I'm saying. Like Blade's end game is amazing. Like especially because they carried it out, and like Blade is one of those things where it's like it's really weird watching it now because we've seen like modern Rider with like collecting gimmick, whereas like Blade is like perfectly made for the collecting gimmick, except this is pre-era of collectathon. So it's like, oh, Blade is fighting this monster and he beats him and he gets the card and it's like, okay, he got the card, right? Like it's like that's one of the problems with Blade is like some of the episodes are like, well, that monster attack. This episode almost skippable. Like it's not that great. So like Blade is one of those things I think it would actually benefit from like an O style like collectathon put into it
I mean, I
because
do.
otherwise it's perfect.
I like that, like, when he captures the monster and gets his card, it's like, that is my power up now. That is a new attack I have available to me.
Yeah, I like that. That's what I'm saying. It's like, but like in Modern Rider, we kind of put an emphasis on that, whereas like Blade is like, yeah, I just did it. There you go. And it's like it's so underplayed, it kind of just like cuts it because like Blade is like the perfect version of the collectathon. Like I mean, like technically O's is the best execution of it, but like Blade has the best setup for it. Right? It's literally like this is my job. My belt is literally made to seal you and use the enemy's powers to beat them. Right? Like that is just the concept of Blade. And it's like, yeah, like if this was a modern show, it would be a perfect setup for that. But without it, there's a little bit lacking because there's like the problem is there's no emphasis of like, oh, I'm using this form or this attack, and it has right. Where it's like it's just like, okay, yeah, I'm using that. There you go, that attack. Oh, right, I remember that thing he did like three, five, whatever episode count it was ago. He's doing that again. Like the attacks don't have meaning for the most part. I mean, like they're useful, but like they're not as memorable as they should be. So that's just kind of a problem watching Modern Rider and going back. But other than that, like it's pretty solid. So yeah, decent endgame, really decent human being. Kind of a little messy plot wise, like in the beginning and middle. Like not all over, but like in the very beginning and in the very second, it's got issues. Um, but like Blade as a human being, great guy. Um, Tachibana is really interesting, but like again, you kind of have to be into that kind of character. Your thoughts on Blade, Drago?
I can't say that now because it's higher on my list.
Same.
Oh,
Uh, uh,
okay. And number four then.
so number four, for me, number four is going to be O's. Uh, I really like the way O's handles its collectathon gimmick with the back and forth of the medals, and so Eiji has his powers based on whatever medals he happens to have that episode. Uh, and just his whole gimmick is, I think, is really cool with the chimera aspect to it. Plus the story executions of the relationship between Eiji and Ankh, as well as the desires of the other greed and their own personal goals. The whole series just hits a lot of right notes.
Yeah, O's is also my number four, so that's great. Um, and yeah, like I feel like we're kind of getting into like no, these are solid, good Kamen Rider shows. Like even amongst writer shows, this is good. Like yeah, if you watch a lot of O's back to back, it does get a little bit savvy because it O's is one of those shows that's meant to be seen week to week. So it's sometimes if you like binge a couple of episodes, like okay, this is a little too formulaic, but that's a small complaint. It's not that bad. You can always just stop and come back. Um, but that being said, like yeah, the dynamic between like Edgy and Ankh is so interesting, so fun. It's kind of fucking heartbreaking that what happens that they well whatever. Watch the show and you find. Well, I guess if you've seen the movie and stuff, you know what happens.
They
But
literally rewrote the ending because Ankh was
Ankh was
such a
too popular.
popular character that they couldn't go forward with the original plan.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um. Honestly, like
And I think
O's.
that makes the show okay. What I was gonna say is that I think Ankh not being the final bad guy makes the show better as a result. And I think that, in my opinion, I think some people would disagree, but that just the thematic elements of the show just shines through with Ankh not being the main villain.
Right. It's especially for like it kind of highlights how good Edgy's character is. Like he makes people better. But like Edgy is just such a good main writer. Like he's such a good person. And he seems simple, but like he's got like kind of a manipulative side. Like he's not as gullible or as nice as he would appear. Like he can like he's good at thinking on his feet for the most part. Like he can manipulate a situation if he goes his own way. Like he's interesting. Like every character has layers. Like the greed are actually interesting once you figure out what the fuck is going on with them. And they're sort of like bad guys, but they're sort of like victims also. It's really interesting. And like each of the individual greed has their own thing going on, and they're all different, and they're all kind of like sort of helping each other, but sort of also getting ready to stab each other in the back. Like it's really interesting, and like again, the best implementation of the collectathon ever, which is like, hey, guess what? Who has what? This is a screen showing who has what. Why is that important? Because this thing allows him to use this power. Who does? How do you get it? You get this person to get it. Why do they want their thing? Because hey, they need this thing to complete themselves, just as you need this thing to get stronger, right? Like it's such a good balance, right? And like literally every character is important. Even like the side characters get well enough development. Um, Cake Boss is freaking great. um,
I
Aqua.
completely forgot to mention Cake Boss when I had him at when was at number 6. He was entertaining.
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
he's great. And the thing is, like Aqua, like here's the thing, right? Like O's is so good that a character just introduced as like a future character got put into a future season,
Right. And like you
right?
were saying how edgy is like super manipulative. One of my favorite moments in O's is during the movie where he goes back in time and the villains are like, "Oh, we'll bring you back if you want," trying to play off of his greed. And he's like, "Yeah, sure, if my family can come with me." And it's like everyone that was with him, it's like, "Yeah, no, it has to be at least this much."
Nice. I was gonna say, I remember the moment in the show where it's like Ankh is like talking shit to him, and like Eddie's just like he just picks up the bell and says like, "Oh no, Ankh, it's so heavy, it's slipping. Oh no, come on!" And it's like totally like it's like early on where like Ankh thinks he can just like, oh, he's a human, I can just fucking intimidate him or like talk down to him, right? And just tell him what to do. And it's like no, like Eddie will fucking like screw you over just as hard if you mess with them too much. It's so good. Like it's such a good dynamic. Like Hina's not a writer, but like this is one of those few times like I don't mind, right? Like she she's perfect for the role she gets, right? Um, like Cake Boss's assistant not getting a birth driver thing is like, alright, that's kind of annoying because she was badass the one time she actually got to use it. But like again, it's not terrible because she's barely in the show, unlike Sawa. Uh, it was too much, even though she had decent plot points nowhere. Um, but like fucking everyone in O's is good. Like Date shows up and is charismatic as fuck, even though he's a little boring. But like he's so fun to watch. Um, and like Oz's whole thing is like, oh, I'm trying to save someone. I can't save everyone, but I'm gonna try to save everyone within my grasp. Like thematically, that goes so well. And then like it goes to Goto, right? Who's the second birth, and it's like shit. Him realizing later on, it's like I can't believe I was such an idiot talking about saving the world. Like I can't believe how hard it is just to save one person. And he like kind of comes around to like Eddie's point of view. Like yeah, doing the right thing is important, but it's not fucking easy. It's like it's so good. Like the
And
characters are amazing.
there's one moment I really like in O's that when AG and the greed actually takes you see how much desire you can extract out of a person, and like he was collecting cell metals by extracting desires from people, and then when he goes to AG's desire, and it is the size of an entire planet, like how much how much he has, like he wants to save people, like he is so selfish in his selflessness that his desire eclipses the entire planet, and that's one of the really most interesting things I've seen in about AG. And he's a really interesting character regardless of how he was built up, like regardless of how simple he seems at first. And I
right,
really
and like they don't mess around where it's like, oh, what's his backstory for being like no, you literally see why saving people is so important to them right off the bat.
All right. So, Drago, your number four is Fies.
yeah, my number four is five. I
My
wanted to make a joke about 555, but then I'm like, nah.
my number two is Fies. Zero. Where do you have Fies?
Number two.
So let's talk about
Well,
Fies.
Okay.
this
Well,
show is
Drago
amazing.
technically got the number, so he can go.
Okay, so this show is amazing. The characters are extremely human. I really like that. Um, Takumi is one of the. Takumi is honestly, he is up there as my favorite protagonist of Kamen Rider, along with Kenzaki.
I
I'll
agree.
get to Genzaki later. Yeah, but so strong characters in back to back. Anyway, from Kuga, not Kuga, Faiz, Blade, Hibiki, and Kabuto, and Deno. All five has so strong characters. I as protagonists, like as far as how memorable they are, that I'm surprised that Ryder was able to do that. But Takumi was so good as a main rider, and how his entire concept about how he about like he doesn't have a dream and he wants to protect other people's dreams, and they try to do that with Yua to some success currently, uh, but seriously, Takumi, and not only that, his the chemistry between him and Kaido and Kisaka being one of the best villains in Kamen Rider, quote unquote, um, and how malicious
I
he
would
is.
say anti-hero, but yeah, you could say it.
I mean, the reason why I put it quote unquote is because for the aspect for the show itself, he is technically the antagonist, because this show isn't about humans versus monsters. This is about complex interpersonal relationships, and how being different affects like people, and how struggling with dual nature of being different and being connected with one side affects interpersonal relationships, and how people, and it's ironic that people have phones but are so bad at communication in that show. And it is not like, I know people like to give it crap for being exaggerated, like why don't they just talk. That is the biggest complaint I've seen. and
Uh,
and my
yeah,
answer to
I've seen
that
like
yeah, my
sorry, go
answer
ahead.
to that is, uh basically, you met real life people. People are terrible at communicating.
Right? Like, I'm gonna always give the Kiba example. Like, hey,
Oh,
Kiba and Spies, right? Like, out of suit, they're sort of friends, and then they kind of become friends, right? In like monster form versus rider form, like they're fucking bitter enemies, right? Like they could really get along if they just talk. Why don't they talk? I'm like, all right, okay, cool. By the way, I once sort of died, then I came back, got super angry, and killed my ex-girlfriend's husband. Cool, who also is my cousin. Yeah. Um, yeah, man, I sometimes turn into a writer, sometimes something else. Um, cool, nice talk. Yeah, like that's fucking gonna happen, right? Oh, Smart Brain's trying to kill me. Oh, right, Smart Brain's trying to kill me. Shit, it should have been nice if we talked about that. Oh. So, like, yeah, you can see the issue where it's like, well, if they talked, life would be easier. It's like, yeah, but it's like, they've got so much fucking baggage, right? Plus, Takumi is, like, socially awkward as fuck, which is amazing, right? Like, that's the best part. Like, Takumi is, like, the most human writer because, like, it goes to one point, it's like, okay, you had the belt, right? And it's like, you should go out and do some writer shit. It's like, oh, fuck that. I don't want to go out on patrol. Like, he's literally too lazy to do it. It's so good. Whereas, like, yeah, if he sees a problem, he'll fight and he'll help people, but like doing the busy work, like he's so not into it. It's freaking great. Like playing hero, he's so not in. It's
Um,
um
for
And
I was gonna say that uh, for me, Takumi is my favorite rider because he's also the most relatable with how realistic he is. Like, there's that part where he finds out that like, oh, or not Yua, well, the girl of the trio he finds out like, oh, she's an orphanok, and so like when Kaiza goes to defeat her, like he starts protecting her, but he can't bring himself to explain to anyone what he's actually doing, and just the way that like he has trouble talking to people is something that like I can relate to from some experiences in my own life.
um,
I mean,
I think okay. I think as far as I think the trouble talking to people, I don't really have that anymore. At least in real life, I used to before, but his entire struggle about the dual nature, whether he's a rider who is bent on defeating Orphanok or he's Orphanok himself, was really relatable to me, and his struggles because of certain reasons. Um, uh, Basically, and then also the fact that he was, and also how I don't know, Toshiki in a way actually, what do you call it, actually made Takumi like, a person who's inside the closet metaphor. I don't know whether it's on purpose or by accident. With how they treated him being an orphanok as, and a lot of social commentary in that show was also spot on. Yeah, it is lower on my list because I think the last few episodes are a bit rushed. Because one of the, I think all my three riders that are at the top have really good ending. So really strong ending at least. So that is where like Fies falters for me, but at least the entire message of Fies really resonated with me quite well, um, due to my own experience with the LGBT community, LGBT being LGBT and stuff. So yeah, so at least that is there, and uh, and I really enjoy the interaction between between all the characters. Everybody was excellently written as human beings, and it felt more like a drama show than a writer show. And the writer show sometimes interfered with the writer stuff, forcing it into every episode. Kind of interfered with the, what do you call it, flow of the show, in my opinion. But otherwise, it was written really well, and that's where my love for the show comes from. And it also came after, what do you call it, after a bout of depression that I had, for a few years, and I came out because while I had that, I couldn't stand watching the show. That's how much it reminded me of my own situation. Uh, that is why after I was a bit better and watching the show, it resonated with me quite a lot, and I really enjoyed the show.
yeah, I mean, I yeah, I can definitely see how well Takumi works as a metaphor. I honestly don't know if that was intentional or not, but like yes, you can 100% read that into the show because it works so damn. Um, as for me personally, like yeah, Five is amazing because again, like Takumi is so socially like I love the moment where it's like he goes back to the bar he used to work at, right? And like the whole reason he's fired, like his boss knows that like he didn't steal, it was the other guys. But like the other guys didn't say anything or pinned it on Takumi, and Takumi's so like not interested in like making a fuss that he's like, yeah, sure, it was me. And he just like quits, right? I'm like, yeah, that's just the type of person Takumi is. And it's like it's so interesting because like normally nobody would ever make this guy into a writer. I mean, like it's kind of the point where it's like um, you have like Mari, who's really kind of sort of pushy person who has to be there, and or the other yeah. Anyway, so like the trio, and he's like way more optimistic, and you have Takumi who's kind of more like a realist, but also more of just a downer. Like their dynamic is great, right? Where it's such an interesting group, and like the and the other thing too is like you have the villain group, but then you have basically like a group of anti-heroes, sort of, or maybe like people who are trying to be heroes but aren't heroes, or villains who are not trying to be villains. They're like the second group in Five is so damn interesting, right? And like the whole thing of like live up to your dreams, or right, like try to live up to your ideals. Where it's like, hey, guess what? The people who have these ideals still have to struggle to maintain the ideals, and like Kiba is so good at that. But it's like, but then they pass on their ideals, and like um other people can realize them. Like Kiba's ideals are pretty much realized by Five, pretty much. Uh, but like Five kind of has to get to know Kiba, and Kiba has to struggle with this whole shit. And like Kaito is like this really interesting foil for Takumi because like Takumi has no dream, and Kaito is this person who had this like huge, amazing dream that got crushed. So it's like like in like Five, the characters are so damn. But the one problem with Five is like, as you said, it's basically a drama show that had to be forced into the writer format. So it's like, yeah, literally every episode flows into the next. But that also means the writer shit has to show up, and it basically just shows up at the beginning and the end of the episode. It's more like, oh, there's a writer fight. It's right at the end, which is always a goddamn cliffhanger, which leads into the next episode where it just immediately kind of gets resolved, which kind of sucks ass. And Lucky Clover is definitely kind of turns into a real bummer because they get their ass kicked so many times because it's a writer show, so you need a fight. So Lucky Clover has to get because they're the villain antagonist group. Because we can't have Murakami show up because like Murakami is actually a threat, right? Like Murakami is so damn actually, right?
Murakami takes three
The
rider kicks to the face at the same time and still survives.
dude, that rider kick scene is still probably like one of the most amazing rider kicks in writer history because like those characters don't work together normally. So they just show up to fight the villain, finally doing it. Like it's such a great build up to that fight. Um, like Murakami is like all these like overpowered antagonists who are like just all ego basically pushing the plot. Like Murakami is the first to do that, kinda, or at least in modern writer. But he does it so much better than like Evolt or like Chronos, right? Or Guy. Like Murakami is amazing. Um,
Okay, when
like
you know what, I am getting confused when you say because I one thing that slipped my mind is whenever you say Murakami, I always picture Kaigsa because his actor's name is Kohei Murakami.
oh, sorry,
Oh,
my bad. I'm talking about the vice pre. No, he's the president of Smart Brain.
Yeah, I don't like that character, honestly.
Uh, that sucks.
Uh,
I mean, like
I feel. I felt Kaigza was better served as an antagonist and as was more interesting compared to him, and that's where like I and Kiba was also a better like foil to Takumi than Murakami. That's why I feel like Murakami just becomes a third tier villain for me, and that's where my feelings about Murakami isn't shared. I still found I think Kronos and Evolve to be more interesting, as far as like interesting to watch as far as villains go. Murakami didn't catch me as much.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think my reason for that is like Kiva is basically like a person trying to be a hero, whereas Kaixa is basically like basically okay. He's like how should I describe? He's basically like Yoshikage Kira. He just wanted a normal life, and then this writer should happen. But I mean, like he's not as evil. Like he does some fucked up shit in five, but that's the whole point. Like he's the one character whose life was kind of okay. Like he was on track to have a normal, decent life. He was past all his trauma bullshit. He was kind of just gonna go live his life, and he was doing okay. And then this writer should happen, and he just kind of loses his shit because he's like, "Fuck off! I just want to go back to my own life. I don't want to deal with this crap anymore." So like as time goes on, he gets more and more extreme. So like I can never hate Kaiza. Plus his whole thing with like Mari, where it's kind of this weird like obsession thing, where it's like he just kind of gets stuck in a loop. Like he's basically in the typical like stalker loop of like, oh, I just need to get with this person, and if I get with this person, everything will be okay. So like you kind of just get stuck in this type of thinking, and then you don't really think of what the fuck you're doing and how much damage you're causing. So like I can't fully hate the guy, but like yeah, he does some fuck. Um, as for Murakami, like the reason why I like him is because like he's built up to be a threat. He continues to be a threat. His job is to be a villain. He's a solid, right? Like he's not this amazing character. Like he's not, super fun or anything. But like he's consistent and he's good and he sticks. Like he doesn't flip flop with his ideals. His ideals is like the best should lead. I'm the best. I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want. And I think like the survival of the fittest. Like he's basically like yeah, Senator Armstrong in Kamen Rider form, where it's like yeah, you're doing some fucked up shit and you're clearly a villain. And you're not super deep, but like it's kind of admirable like how well you're doing your right. Like for the story being told, you're doing your part and you're doing it well. So that's why I'm okay with. It's also he's okay because he doesn't fuck up as opposed to like most of the other CEOs. Whereas like yeah, he falls, but it's not him being bad. It's just the writers got better. They got good enough to finally kick his ass. Like he challenges them to be better.
All right. So, my number three is Blade. Drago, where do you have Blade?
Number one.
So, there's not much I can add to what Zero said earlier, other than I think that Blade, hands down, has the best ending of any Rider series.
And that is half the reason why it's in my number one, because you can interchange number one, two, and three for me.
Pretty much same here.
And yeah, so that is fine. And okay, I think I would add double to number four. So alongside five. Uh, but and you also already okay. I'll talk about double later, but it's just small thing. But here, Blade, Taco, no, sorry, Kenzaki is such a good character as far as Rider goes. He is the, I think other people say that Goda is the pinnacle of Rider as far as Riders is concerned. I would disagree. Uh, I think Kenzaki is what a Rider should aim to be. He is the best character that I think in Blade, in my opinion, because of how him getting connected with all other four riders inspires them to be better, and how he changes Hajime's life, how their relationship builds from the from the beginning episodes till the end, and how his sacrifice, he sacrifices himself. He wants to be with Hajime and others, but he sacrificed himself to so that so Hajime can live, and how they can never meet again. That is one of that is a tragedy that I really enjoyed, and I really like the chemistry between Hajime and Kenzaki. It's one of the best chemistry there is. Uh, it's one of the best chemistry in Rider. I think there are other characters, other duos as well in Kamen Rider that have really good chemistry, and all four of the duos are there somewhere in my top four. Uh, that is double and the other two. But and Tachibana is also a good character. Yeah, I didn't like him. I think I didn't get his character in the first beginning episodes. But then I understood. But eventually, in the middle of I think episode 6, where I understood where it was going, and it clicked with me. Uh, like how so, and then I enjoyed the filming and cinematography that they portrayed, except the jarring light thing. That always shows up, where there's a flash that's so bright in the background that kind of bothered me. Other than that, it was really good, well constructed, directed, and you know, the atmosphere is really good. Uh, and the build up to all four riders coming together to fight the villain was excellent. Um, and especially the scene where like they all transform in a on the bike. That's so cool. And I didn't like I don't think I disliked any character in that show. Mutsuki is the one I like the least because of how it just went around in circles at some moments in time. But but ultimately he's I liked his arc enough to forgive that. And I know there are problems with the show in the middle section because how they repeat the character and how the writer was changed, but it still feels like one person wrote that show ultimately, because of how the thematic elements run through it, and how everything that was established in the first half by a different writer is used by the second writer to establish everything and to pay off that in the next arc. Because Blade literally starts in the middle of a show that's already in like 10 or 15 episodes in. So you have to piece that together from the start, basically, from the breadcrumbs of clues that it gives you. And and that's the aspect of Blade I really like. It just because of Kenzaki, I am putting and the ending, I'm putting Blade in number one, but the other two in number two and three, I can interchange it depending on my mood.
And Tachibana is definitely a character that retroactively gets better once you understand him. And also, I'm a big fan of the camera work in Blade. Uh, the way they handle it, just like there are times where like it's clearly someone just holding the camera and it's a little shaky, but it just works with the atmosphere and scenery.
Yeah, I mean, I especially remember this one shot where it's like Blade has this amazing moment. Like it's not super special or anything, but it's like, okay, like Blade like deflects like an energy blast, right, which is just this green CGI thing. Except it like passes Blade, gets deflected by his sword, hits a pillar, and the pillar like has stuff fall out of it because it got cracked through. Right? And I'm like, man, that is still like it's been like almost 20 years and still such an amazing moment. It's like yeah, CGI interacting with the real world. It's such a small touch, but it makes it feel so much more real. It's like goddamn, so good. As for Kinzaki versus Godai, Um, the thing with Godai is like Godai is too damn right, and that's the thing. Like he's just too much of this amazing good guy hero person who can pretty much do no wrong. Um, Whereas like Kinzaki is just like he seems like a regular person trying to do his, which makes him way more realistic. So like yeah, Kinzaki's amazing.
All right. So Drago, you wanted to talk about Double a little bit?
Oh yeah, Double is also in my number four alongside Fives, because I couldn't find a place to put it, but then I realized I enjoyed it as much. While the comedy is a bit excessive, I would agree with Zero. It's not that annoying. After a rewatch, I'd seen Double. I think when I was 14, 13 or 14, but then again I saw it again when I was like around 16 or 17, around that time a few years ago. And back then I realized like how much Double actually, how good Double actually is. With the entire city itself feels like a character, and that is never a case in Rider, because the the way the city interacts, how the cast of character, and how everybody in the, what do you call it, city is a character. Like you see them constantly. You have seen some of the characters in the background who become a victim of the week in few episodes later, and how the and I disagree that the concept of hardball is focused on. I think the concept of family and hardball is given almost equal importance. But
Yeah, it's just at the end where they double down on the hey, Shorter is teaching the next kid who's basically like him about the hard boiled shit. I'm like, God damn, that's so dumb. And they
no,
basically like
I
teach the family stuff, which I wasn't. But like otherwise, yeah, the theme for the most of the show though does a pretty good job of them. Like the honest reason why I was like the hard boiled thing is kind of dumb is because like Shoto's thing catchphrase is like, "Oh, the city's my garden" or something like that. I'm like, that is a dumb catchphrase because it doesn't mean anything. Um,
okay.
whereas like where it's like he's an orphan, so the reason why he should be protecting his city is like he should be like the city's my family, right? Because the whole thing with the show is like you have fuck like the evil organization who's basically a family, and then you have like the detective agency, which is kind of this weird pseudo family, right? Thing going on, and then you have like Akiko and her dad, and like all this other stuff, and like Shroud, and um, right, and Philippine is all that stuff. So, which is cool.
Oh,
Oh, and Terry and his family. So like everything's all about family, and then it comes to like Shotaro is like literally the person connected, like no family pretty much, or like he's an orphan, so he's building his own family. And then like his thing is like, oh, his catchphrase is about some random cool guy type thing, and it's like so
oh,
lame.
oh, okay. I don't know whether I don't know whether that's your interpretation or I think misunderstanding. I feel that the reason, I think what we are supposed to feel when Shotaro says that is we should cringe, because he is copying what hardball detectives are technically how they are portrayed in media as. He is copying his mentor basically, but not realizing that he himself is a hardball detective. He just doesn't let whatever happens in his detective work or his past to influence who he is when he's not doing the job. He he's a chill person. Everything else he doesn't let whenever he's not on duty. But when on duty, he is hard boiled. He takes other people call him half boiled, but that is a wrong moniker to give him, because he technically is hard boiled, because unlike Terry, who shows the qualities of hard boiled detective by personality and demeanor, is half boiled because he lets emotion cloud his judgment. While Shotaro keeps emotion in his judgment, but not emotion of his own emotions, but rather the emotion of the person who is the who has committed the crime, or the victim themselves. So that is taken into consideration, because if you act, because the point of the show was, you are not a hardball detective if you don't like factor in everything. And that's, and also the fact that Shotaro is, and also it was about the partnership between Shotaro and Philip is legitimately amazing. I cannot say any better partners in Kamen Rider. Sento and Banjo get close.
Eiji and Ankh are pretty close.
Yes, Aizy and Anka are pretty close, but and Ichijo and Godai are pretty close. So these three are close, but Shotaro and Philip embody the two in one Kamen Rider aspect, which I don't think anybody can take away from them, and they do it wonderfully. And how episode 47 was, 47 or 48 was heartbreaking as hell when stuff happened. uh and the how they use the music in the show to portray the atmosphere, and how the double movie is amazing. All of Double's movies. Like double half of the Decade movie is great. The double Begins Night movie. No, no, the Begins Night part of Decade movie is great. The A to Z Gaia Memories of Fate is great. The Axel movie is great. The Eternal movie is decent, and even the double half of the Oz movie is really good. So Double has literally no spots where I have any complaints towards the show. Uh, at all. It doesn't hit the emotional highs as the top three shows do, but and the ending episode 48, and the ending episode kind of kills kills some of the things that I really liked about the prior episode. So that's where I have an issue with it. But otherwise, I really enjoy Double. Double is, it is genuinely, how it is genuinely it, I don't know, like, it did set the precedent for the rest of the shows in this past 10 years. But Double is like Kuga. It is different, it is different from other shows, while having similar, while it gives an illusion of having similar beats as the shows that came after. It just became a good foundation for the rest of the post decade Heisei era, in my opinion. And that I really enjoy it.
All right. So, getting up there, Zero, what is your number three?
Okay, so number three would have to be Kiva, and yeah, it's weird because it's this high up, but like the reason is like I have number one and number two where it's like, well, Spies is number two because it's got problems, right? And Kiva is there because like Kiva is like the first Rider show I fully finished. Like it got me into Rider, but then I rewatched it and I'm like, yeah, it's still really solid. It's got problems, right?
Yes, it
And
does.
like I mean, it's written by Inoue, so like it's got Inoue problems, but what got me into Rider is still what's good about Kiva, which is like its characters are amazing, right? Like if even if you're not someone who's into like superheroes or Kamen Rider or any of that shit, you can still watch Kiva just for the characters. They're that
I
good.
I did really like the 1988 or 1986 sections. In
Yeah.
particular, I felt I really enjoyed Otoya and just the way he presents himself throughout the show.
Yeah, I mean like
Um,
Otoya.
okay. For me, Kiva doesn't break the top 10. It's not even on my honorable mentions. If it was just the 1986 stuff, I would just straight up keep it at number. I think I know it would be in my top five at least. But since it is the 2008 section is also there, which I really didn't like. I mean, I enjoyed some of the aspects of the show, but how the execution of it was not great. But 1986
Drago, you cut out. Okay, seems Drago's having some mic issues again. Zero, do you have anything more to say about Kiva?
Yeah, I was gonna say like um, Kiva Kiva's a really interesting show because it's a type of writer show or like superhero shows we don't really get in Tokusatsu. Well, no, but like well, I guess there's like Ultra Seven X, but or Mebius also. But the point is like you don't really get it in Rider, which is like right, which is like Kiva's a legacy hero because like he's the second generation vampire hunter basically, and so like the 2008 storyline is like the second generation vampire hunter carrying on like the legacy of the 1986 crew. And it's super interesting because like Wataru and Otoya are so different, right? And like Wataru's whole struggle is like he's trying to live up to his dad's legacy, and then you actually see his dad, and it's like his dad's not super great, so it's like why the fuck is he remembered so fondly? And then you see two points of view. It's like, hey, following somebody's legacy will just crush you. You should just end up being your own person and try to do the best you can. You know, that's the best you can hope for. Hopefully it works out. And then on the Otoya side, it's like you don't have to be a good person all the fucking time, but you, when it counts, do the right fucking thing and stand your ground. So like it's really interesting because like the lessons they have to portray or learn or their story arc tell are exact opposite. Whereas like Watcher is like this good kid all the time, um, but it's like he just feels like he's not good enough, even though like he's super nice and he helps everyone. He keeps fighting, right? And Otoya is kind of like a scumbag, but like a charming scumbag. Uh, but the thing is like, yeah, like you will be remembered, or you don't even have to be remembered. Like when the chips are down, like do the right fucking thing. That's what's important, and Otoya does that, and he's an example of that. And like, goddamn, the music in Kiva gets me every time. Like Otoya's last episode, like, holy fuck, man, I was losing it so hard. Um, like I could barely keep it together, especially because they added the music for that. And like literally, like all the main characters are super interesting. They've got like something going on. Yeah, like I will agree, the 2008 cast is not as amazing as the 1986 cast, but I'm like, that's that is kind of annoying. But like they're not bad either, right? Like they all have something going on. Like it's like Kiva's a really nice show. Um, especially like if you've got stuff going on. Like here's the thing. If you're I don't know, like high school, maybe junior high, or like trying to have like a formative year or like experience or something, watch Kiva, right? Because it it deals with the problems of like trying to be better or trying to like grow past your problems or trying to live up to a legacy or any of that shit. And Kiva deals with that. And so it's like it's a very like human emotion focused show. The writer side, on the other hand, is not as well handled. Like the suits look amazing and everything, but it's like, yeah, sometimes the fights are just kind of there, which is not great. But like when the plot gets going, it gets going. And Kiva has like a really solid ending. Um, and its villains, like the Checkmate Four, are great because unlike Fives with Lucky Clover, who kind of just turned into a joke by the end, like Checkmate 4 are scary. Like, they're scary fuckers. Like, whenever they show up, like, you can't take them lightly. they will wreck your shit, right? Like if like one shows up, like be prepared to fight, right? Like really hard. Like if two of them show up, like just fucking pray you make it out, right? Like they are insanely strong. And the designs are amazing. The fucking rider kicks badass as hell. The music's great. Like freaking everybody sings pretty much from the main cast, so the songs are amazing. Um, but yeah, as a show, like yeah, writer show point for point, not the best writer. As a drama though, pretty damn solid. As like a character study, amazing, right? Like honestly, it's great. Um, like I'm putting it this high just because the characters are so fucking. And it's again, it's in a way, so it's kind of got that thing where you have to read a little bit between the lines. Like it's not as insane as Five, where it's like you have to read a shit ton of what the fuck they're actually implying and why they're saying that in Five, or just watch it a second. That might help. But like Kiva, a lot less of that, but it's like there's still a decent going on. Yeah, but like it's a really interesting. So basically, it's like a writer show for non-writer kind. Where it's like the fights are there, they're nice and flashy, but they're not super important. Uh, the character plots aren't like some giant mystery or like super like follow this breadcrumbs to this thing or that thing or like look at this like wacky character or what they're doing. No, it's just like hey, these characters exist. Just watch them hang out and see what happens. And if you're cool with that, you're gonna enjoy this show. If you're not, it's gonna be a little rough.
And again, I really enjoyed the 1986 section, so I recommend people watch Kiva once just to see those. Drago is
Okay, I think there was a cut of only a 1986 version that was present few I think about 6 years ago. At least it was present there before Toei's YouTube copyright system took it down, and the torrent of that hasn't been like basically the few percentage of it. I don't have that, so it's super disappointing for me. Other than that, I really love 1986 version of Kiva, and Otoya Kurenai is one of my favorite characters in Kamen Rider. However, I didn't like the 2008 version of Kiva. Some of the stuff like Wataru was an interesting enough character, but the drama and everything wasn't engaging enough for me. That 1986 version kept me hooked. I always wanted to go back to that time instead of 2008. So yeah, and I like the simplistic look of the suit of Ixa in 2008, no, not 2008, so 1986, then 2008 one.
Oh yeah,
And
I don't. I honestly don't like the part of Ixa. Like basic Ixa looks so much.
yeah, so and the music is amazing. Other than that, yeah, I have nothing much to say about uh keep
moving on. Drago, what is your number three?
Akumizer 3.
Dude, that show's actually really solid.
I know. I'm just mentioning other tokusatsu shows so that other people, if they come across that, they'll watch it and not just stick with Kamen Rider and Sentai.
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
especially considering that show's on Toei's YouTube channel. Like, I saw like a fair bit of them, but like, damn, that show like starts off real strong. Like, holy shit! Like, it's got a sequel. The sequel's not as good, or at least the first couple are not as great. Akumizer 3 actually is one of them. Like yeah, like older tokusatsu have like really interesting stuff because like they just have to set up their premise and go because they're episodic. Like Akima's 3 is like just fucking going. Like Akima's 3, Blue SWAT's pretty good. Um, that's from Metal Heroes. That's
Wind Spectre is great.
Wind Spectre is interesting, honestly. Um, and Jiraiya is pretty interesting. I mean, like villains wise.
I
Uh,
haven't seen Jiraiya yet, so I'll check that out.
I've seen like maybe like one or two episodes. It's a really um, but yeah, like Akama's 3, like for being as old as it is, like damn, that show is
Okay, I'll tell my real number three. Shibuya 15. Oh, no, just joking.
we Shibuya 15 is super good. Um,
Okay, okay. Okay, number three and number two are also very interchangeable for me. I'll put Kuga at number three right now with what I feel. Um, Kuga is just a solid show from beginning to end. I have no issues with it whatsoever. Um, like the villains, one thing the main villain comes off pretty late in the game, in my opinion, for me to care about it a bit. But other than that, I have the side characters are really solid and grounded. Everybody is like, you know what, the thing I like about fights where everybody's human. Kuga is the same thing, but even more grounded, where where everybody has a story that they have to tell and how they deal with the monster attacks, and how people there are people's lives being affected beyond, like, what do you call it, beyond just the main characters, and like the artist on the side of the street might lose his job, lost his job because of a monster attack that happened that he couldn't reach his destination on time, and or like the
right,
or the doctor
or like
doctor
they have to discuss should we even have kids in a world with monsters running around, right? Like that was
yeah.
fucking
And especially the episode where like Kuga beats the shit out of the monster who tried to attack the
oh, the
high schooler.
porcupine one, right? I
Yeah.
always love that because like you see like you have Ichigo, and then you have the other like newer police guy who's basically like Ichigo's like helper cop person. I mean, there's like three of them by the end. Not the older one, the one who's younger than Ichigo, who's like the sniper dude, right? And then like there's an episode focused on him, and it's this one, and like the other cop's like, oh, you know Kuga, right? What's he like? He's like, oh yeah, he's this like really cool, chill dude, right? He says that, and like a little time later, Kuga just like jumps out of a window and beats the shit out of the porcupine guy like a maniac. I'm like, all right, like the one episode you have to yourself and Kuga. Kuga is just going crazy. Um, yeah, that was fucking hilarious. I mean, that episode's
Oh no,
dark as hell.
it's dark.
It's one of the
uh,
best ones, though.
and the progression of how he goes from base form to ultimate form in the final episode is just spectacular. The and how the last episode doesn't even have Kuga until the very end, where he's just walking along the beach and he's continuing his travels, where he changed and his character development isn't like how other people who fundamentally not fundamentally there's a visible change like as such, but for Kuga it's like the acting itself, like how the actor portrays his emotions. Like in the beginning, he smiled genuinely. At the end, he was even struggling to smile, and he was deeply wounded, permanently wounded by being a Kamen Rider, and how the portrayal of that Kamen Rider, being a Kamen Rider, is suffering that, you know, suffering the world's problems on your shoulders, and how you have to be something else, a monster to beat a monster. That itself, uh, not monster as such. I'm like, you have to hurt yourself so that you can fight more, to protect other people. That itself, idea of that is carried really well into Kuga from the original Kamen Rider, and that's what I really liked about Kuga. And the relationship between Ichigo and Godai, is really good. And I kind of wish that Ichigo had a suit because he would be included in the secondary riders later on in the anniversary series. Shit,
Yeah, I
my
mean,
voice died.
There
Yeah,
was
the
concept art of other riders that just didn't get made because of circumstances.
From what I've heard, that the G3 suit as such wasn't ready for Kuga, so that they used that in Nagito. At least that's the rumor I've heard. Uh, it is supposed to be used by Ichijo, from what heard. But other than that, it is really good. I really like that. I really like how the progression of the show, and how Yusuke is the centerpiece, but everybody else is as important. And I really like the bike scenes as well. We don't get to see that often here nowadays, but yeah,
yeah. I mean,
it is very well
honestly, like
shot,
everybody
directed.
has to be important when you have to start considering the size of explosion where you have to fight them because of the explosion while you're trying to stop the murder Olympics.
Mm. And I kind of miss Kuga as such, the style of Kuga, where, like, the, and I think Double as well, which did it to a good extent, where the world is built around the main characters, which is super expansive, and every character is important-ish to the world, even if they're by their mere presence, and how they affect and change other people, which I think Zero One tried to do, but it has kind of failed at doing. Uh,
Yeah,
so
zero
that
one, zero one's got the XA problem. Like it seems like a lot of stuff will be important, but then you kind of just run into these are the cast of characters, and that's all we're gonna get because that's all the budget we have. And so like it kind of just shrinks the world, which is annoying. Whereas like in Kuga, they keep introducing characters because like yeah man, I'm not like an expert in everything. I know this person is, let me go ask them, right? And they have like and once they become reoccurring character, you see, well, they're like human beings too. They've got their own shit to deal with. So yeah, Kuga, I will say it's pretty interesting. Like yeah, again, but the well, like in my point of view, it's a little bit of a problem, but in yours, whereas like yeah, they're very like normal-ish human characters, but the thing is they're a little bit too normal-ish human characters, so they're not like super memorable. I mean, like I remember who the hell they are, but it's not like hey, let's go hang out with this character, you know? Because it's like yeah, you were cool in the show and you had like a storyline. Um, but like I don't know. Like they seem less like fictional characters and they just seem like regular people working in a world where monsters just exist. Which makes Kuga has like a very different vibe than most of their shows.
All right, Drago, what's your number two?
build. Well, I love build, as you guys already know. It is kind of interesting. Okay, the first, I think, 30 episodes or so is tightly written. Every character is really goddamn great, and how the characters deal with this ever-changing world of that's going into conflict. That was very well done. Stark was a really good villain. So was Rogue. Nanba was very interesting, and the characters, the characters arcs was so good that I really enjoy watching them. Even Sawa, I know people don't like her, neither do I, to a certain degree, because they did stop using her well, as later, because she just was there in the background, which I kind of liked, because she at least present instead of just disappearing in the show. But they didn't do much with her later on, which I was sort of disappointed by. Other that's that I do have. I'm not saying I don't have issues with Build that I don't have with other shows, but Build is just when it's strong, it is really strong. It hits higher notes for me than all other shows. Um, Banjo's progression as a Kamen Rider, Sendo's dealing with everything that's going on around him, and how he deals with him being the guy who started building weapons, and what do you call it, and how he deals with him killing someone else, and that informed his character throughout the latter half of the show, and how and and in the Be the One movie, I know this, including the movie, that I kind of did say a bad thing about X8 is that everything was so much in the movies. Sendo's characters comes to a head, to a conclusion in the movie, because he finally makes something on his own. Like finally he does something on his own where nobody else is there to surround him, so he hypes himself up so that he has to take this center stage so that he can save his friends because nobody else is there to protect him. And that's what I really enjoyed about his character development throughout the show. And it was not that his character development from episode 1 to 21, like 1 to 21 was one thing, and after 21 till the movie was another, which I really enjoyed, and how you can see his frustration and his anger and his excitement, everything. You see his emotional range throughout the show. And Banjo is an interesting character that was present there, and his dynamic with everybody else was really good. Oh shit! I need to drink some water.
Yeah, I do agree. Build has like really freaking good act, man. Like that cast is amazing. Some of the secondary characters don't get much to do, but those people, like everybody in Build could act, like really fucking well. I will give it that.
Yeah, and I think I prefer the because of the actors itself. I think this is ranking higher in my list, but also that I recently watched Build again because I don't know, after all the discussions that we have had and I've had with other people, like I was feeling like what I felt during the show, like this hype that, or the was I riding the coattails of episode 1 to 30 and continuing that into the final arc. But then after watching it, I realized I really didn't have any issues Bolt in the rewatch because I know where he's going. Maybe that is also there, and also the fact that he didn't bother me as much. And I know some of the stuff is a bit but the actor was so charismatic, and the final arc was so powerful for me that I forgave him for, like, being evil, or all the shenanigans that happens in the show. Um,
Yeah,
and
I feel like Build would be better on the rewatch because you could like skip through all the Evolved tidings much better. Where it's like, e- like the problem was we watched it week to week, and that made it much worse. Like even if we like even us who complain so much, if we just watched it in a row, it's like it won't be as bad as we said it in the podcast because like when you have to drag it out and you have to literally point out every single dumbass shit that Evolve just pulled, like we magnified it way too much. So like yeah, even I like rewatching Build, like I don't hate it, right? It's just like I feel like Namba Industries plotline was really interesting, but they bumbled that super hard. And Evolve final arc was a little dragged out. Like if you fix that, like Build could definitely be in the top 10. Like right now, it's not even that far out. Like it's literally in the honorable, right? If I extended this to list, it could just right. Like if I had a list of 11, like Build could be there. So it's not
yeah,
bad. It's just personally like I okay. One is like the evolve thing, and two is like the full bottles, like way too many full bottles, and that kind of just annoys. So like on a like personal level, like I can't allow a show that did something that annoying to be in here. But again, that's just my personal problem. It's not a problem with the show per se.
well, for
Maybe
me,
maybe on a rewatch, Evil wouldn't be so bad, but I'd have to rewatch Bill to see that. But by the end, he grew tiresome and felt like he was contradicting himself.
um, as I rewatched the show, I realized he wasn't really. uh, the the only time where I felt that he was contradicting himself kind of was during the dad dad build arc where everything was kind of because that is only where his character falters a bit and where that stupid episode 43 where Misora does something dumb and that was really out of character for her. And everything else other than that, I think on a rewatch most of it is fixed. I really enjoyed, and especially after watching the movies when you are supposed to watch them, not the V cinemas, but rather the Rogue special, the Heisei Generations final movie, and Be the One. After watching all these three, I have a really good grasp of all the characters. Kazumi is a really interesting character because he does he does the hard heroic thing of making the hard decisions in the show without and instead of the stupid like go and save other people and give up this MacGuffin so that the villains have an advantage and you can save the your people you care about temporarily. And Rogue is also a really good character where his development slowly he became a better person. I know the episode 41 and 42 is a bit jarring where he just dresses up and whatever and it's just strange to see, but if I had seen the Rogue special prior and he was kind of a goofball in his free time, so in a rewatch it didn't seem that bad, but the the shirt gag was hilarious to be honest. On a rewatch. The Kazumi and Misora's thing, I did enjoy the development of the relationship, but just some of it was a bit too much for me. I do have. It's not that I don't have problems with this show, but when it hits its highs, like it hits so many highs throughout the show. Like Kazumi's death. Sorry, I spoiled something. Then Gentoku's last battle against Evolved, and and Sento just going to space to save Banjo, and how they together beat Evolved, and the episode 25 where Bill becomes Rabbit Tank and battles Rogue. So many memorable moments this show has for me that it just becomes even with its problem it just becomes unforgettable for me, and that's the mark of a good show where the characters, the actors, and the writing is just while not the perfect things it just you can't forget it because the moments were so significant for in that show, and that's why I keep Build at number two. To be honest, I
Yeah,
can interchange that with Kuga or Blade, so yeah, these three.
that that's fair. I was gonna say like I will give Build one thing is like it's got really fucking memorable moments. Like okay, Hazard Trigger, so fucking good. Like probably the best like execution of like a dangerous power up ever. Like everything to do with the Hazard Trigger arc is amazing.
All right. So before we finish off the number ones, let's give some honorable mentions. I'm gonna say Kamen Rider Forze. With its main message being about friendship and getting along and the whole high school setting, it pretty much is Baby's first Rider series, but it's still well executed and worth watching, I would say.
Um, since yeah, I would agree with that. It would also be in my honorable mentions. Kamen Rider Amazons, as after we already talked about it in the beginning, but again, the message about you know consumption in the show, which is ever present in from beginning till the end, was really strong. If you think about it, it convinced me to eat more plant-based diet. Uh, because of what happens in the final movie and how I was convinced of why it is kind of hypocritical. How humans are big hypocrites in how we deal with animals and us ourselves. Uh, and then Hibiki, because Hibiki's first half is really strong. Like the first 30 episodes, even the last 20 people exaggerate like how bad it is. It's not that bad. It just is a different show, but it is really enjoyable if you watch it. I would highly recommend. It's a feel good comfort show for me. Like I could just pop it in one day, watch some episodes, and be done with it. Oh yeah, I
What?
forgot. Kamen Rider Zo. That is a movie. But it's an honorable mention because the directing, the cast, the action, the bike thing, the how the entire set design, everything. If you want to see a technically crafted rider, Zo is amazing. Keita Amamiya brings his A game to that
Yeah.
movie, and it's amazing. Just watch it.
God damn it, Drago. You literally stole like all my recommendations. Um, yeah, it's amazing. I was like, oh right, Amazon. So I was like, oh yeah, here's Amazon. Oh right, the '90s. Oh right, '90s. I'm like, God. um, yeah. Okay, fine. So I'm gonna have to pull out a recommendation. All right, man.
You don't have to.
Um. Well,
If you
I was
just
gonna
want.
say, yeah. Watch the fucking Chibi special. It's like 30 minutes. It's great. It's from like a writer DVD thing where it's like it's basically like
Oh,
comedy.
the Chibi Rider thing.
Yeah, the SD writer ones. I was like, oh man, that's great. Just fucking watch that. Um,
Um, Another one I would recommend, I would highly, my honorable mention is Kamen Rider Ryuki. I might not like the show because of the main character, but everything else in that show is solid. And Ren is a really good dynamic character, which you want to watch as a lead, which I wanted to watch as a lead, and but I got Shinji, so yeah, you might enjoy it because Zero and Riley clearly do.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's funny that you mentioned that because Ryuki is my number one.
yeah, same.
Segway.
Yeah. Um, it's pretty great. I mean, okay. Honestly, like, yeah, we were kind of dissing on build a little bit, but like, it's still really solid. Um, you have like free reign to fucking hammer on Ryuki, and because like we're pretty much gonna gush on it, Drago. But Ryuki, like, yeah, let's get the Shinji thing out of the way. The reason why I think Shinji works is like one, like he's a really human character because like Ryuki's Ryuki basically theme is you don't have to do the right thing all the time. All you have to do is try, right? And like Shinji, like that's the thing. Like everybody in the show calls Shinji an idiot. It's like he doesn't know what the smart thing to do is, but but everybody kind of turn and like get influenced by Shinji's way of thinking of like, hey, maybe all this fighting is kind of stupid. Like by the end, because like Shinji is such a like, or he's trying to be a decent human being, even though he doesn't have like all the answers, and even though he doesn't have like like the perfect solutions or anything, and like even like he has problems too, right? Like in the beginning, it was like, why are you guys all just trying to kill each other and fight? And it's like, yeah, it comes to one point later on where it's like, oh, he fucking finally realizes like, yeah, I'm in a no-win scenario here. Like, I might actually have to do this fucking writer for real
Right. What
and
I
like
like
kill
about.
these people. And then everybody by that time has been infected by Shinji's kind of point of view is like this fighting is stupid. So when he tries to throw them the fight, everybody's like, "What are you doing? This is." And it's like, yeah, it's like it's a really nuanced thing. And like Shinji, like here's the thing: Shinji in a vacuum by himself, not super great of a character. Shinji and Ryuki, works so well because his whole character is like thematic element of Ryuki, right? Like he is Ryuki as Ryuki is a statement on Kamen Rider in that moment. Like he's the actualization of the thesis of Ryuki, which is like you don't have to be perfect, you just gotta try. And like O's is sort of like that too, but a little bit more likable, where it's like you can't save everyone, but try to save the person you can reach. So like Edgy is basically like Shinji if Shinji was a lot more like a little bit smarter, a lot more likable. But even in Ryuki,
or just
Shinji
better
feels
written.
like sorry, go ahead.
So what I like about Shinji is that he's kind of like out of place in the show. He's trying to be that standard good guy rider in a series where that's not supposed to exist. Where like you're saying, like all the other riders are like, "What are you doing? That's not what the point of this is." And so just seeing how he kind of represents like any other main rider, sort of, who in this situation of like, how would they feel about this? Like, what would a regular main rider do? To clash with the ideals of the rider war. That's why I like Shinji. That's why I think he works as the main character.
Right. I mean, like the show is called Kamen Rider Ryuki, and the show does a good point of saying like, okay, this is a show of writers. There are like 12 other people who are writers. Why is Ryuki important enough to have the title? Is because yeah, Shinji's actions by the end change all these other people and make them better. So like he's deserving of that title. Plus, like Ryuki has like really, really fucking good character. Like literally all the writers are interesting, and they're all very different.
I think the two characters I feel that are super boring in Ryuki are I think Thrust and I think after a certain point Asakura, he because he overstays the welcome, and Shiro Kanzaki, while a okay villain, I feel the other characters in the show are just better written, or he's like most underwritten character in that show in my opinion.
Yeah, I
Kanzaki
would have to
or
agree.
Asakura was supposed to be defeated by Night Survive, but the character was popular, so they kept him alive. But didn't really have anything to do with him anymore because his story arc was played out.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
I
was
know.
literally is better Ryuki, or at least correctly.
Zero, is Ryuki your number one as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Drago, you were saying
I know. What I mean is that yeah, the characters of in Ryuki are just super solid. Uh, I think everybody from I forgot his name, Zolda to Goro to Ren to the what do you call it? I forgot her name. The boss of Shinji. Uh, I really
Uh,
I
are
don't
you
remember
talking
the full
about
villain.
the grandma from the diner, or are you talking about the journalist?
The journalist. I hate the grandma from the diner.
oh god, I hate her
Reiko?
too. Yeah, Reiko.
Not Reiko. The guy who is the boss of Shinji.
Oh,
Oh
the editor
yeah,
in
I don't
chief.
know his.
Yeah, I forgot his name.
I don't think I ever knew it.
Well, I mean, like Shinji, I think always just calls him like senpai because they used to go to like high
Or like
school
boss
together.
or something.
Well, no, the thing is like he knew Shinji. That's the whole reason Shinji got the job, right? Is because like he knew him before he was a journalist, right? Like they used to go to school or like high school or something. So like he is like Shinji's kind of like friend person. Um,
Oh, that
so like
explains
he
why
never
Shinji's
calls
a
him
bad journalist.
right. And it's like yeah, that's why he gets to have a job even though he's not super good at it. Um, yeah, whatever.
Uh,
It's interesting,
and
but go ahead.
what I was saying is, yeah, and I don't like. I think Reiko would be Reiko. I'm not really a fan of. Yui is a really interesting character, and to be honest, I feel that she would fit better if she was the main character, and
Yeah, but
that's where I have problems with Ryuki because Shinji. I don't know. It's not that I don't like I don't like what they're doing with Shinji. I just don't feel he's the fitting character to do that to.
that's
And
fair. Like,
that's where I have problems with it. And that's my it's just that flaw of that, like how you guys say where the glaring flaw of Evolved in build. This is the glaring flaw for me in Ryuki is Shinji himself. Like I I want to like him as a character. I feel that he is the if I was outside the show, if I would hang out with him, it would be it would be a fun time. I feel at least because he's an interesting enough person to hang out with. But he just super not fitting in this show. I know that's the kind of the point, but you know how Kenzaki, even while being the good guy protagonist, also strives to do the right thing ultimately. Shinji kinda doesn't, in my opinion. Like the, I know moral high ground of not being killing anyone is a good thing, but when you have Asakura there, I don't think it. I don't think it is. I think you can excuse that much at least.
yeah, I mean, I will agree. Like, I'm not saying Shinji is the most amazing character in that show. Like, yeah, he's good, but like, yeah, again, like Yui would have been a much more interesting main character. Ren would have been much more interesting. The problem with like Ren being the main character is it just turns into a battle royale. And then like
No, no, no,
Kenzaki.
you still have Shinji there. You just make Ren the main character.
Yeah,
Right, but the problem is like if Ren's the main character, he gets to win, which means Kenzaki should.
He won anyways.
Yeah, I know, but like at least Shinji and Tezuka kind of like fuck over Kenzaki Shiro's plans. Whereas like if Ren
but
was the
that
main
wouldn't
character,
change though.
yeah, I mean, okay, I'm just saying like if you're writing the show, like okay, Ren being the rival is interesting. Shinji being the rival would be annoying as fuck, right? Because it'd be like, oh, look at this moral high asshole who's stopping me from reviving my girlfriend,
That is
right?
what I
So like,
feel about Shinji.
right, but like the thing is like, Shinji doesn't know that Ren's girlfriend is the reason why he's fighting. So like, Shinji's moral high grounding kind of makes sense for that point of view. But like when he figures it out, like he starts having a lot more problems with what the fuck he's doing. But yeah, you're right. I will agree that like Shinji's not like if somebody had to be like, all right, here's the 13 riders, pick a dude to be the main rider. It's like, well, like, okay, you could literally do Shinji, but Tezuka is a more interesting Shinji, right? Because his thing is like, I want to defy fate. So yeah, I will agree. Like Shinji's not the most amazing character. Like there's much better picks. But that being said, like the other reason I really like Ryuki is the incorporation of the real world in and the writer stuff is like you have all the common writer stuff going on. But then you also have all this stuff that most modern writer doesn't deal with, which is like regular life, right? It's like, hey, yeah, these people have jobs, they have to find places to live. They can be sued, they can get arrested, like they can get into a situation where a normal human person can threaten their life. Like shit like that happens, right? It's like it's so much more interesting because like normal life goes on. Plus, you have like wacky ass like throwaway single episodes like that like fucking wedding one is still the best. Where they demolish the shit out of that guy's apartment.
Oh
or
shit!
or
Try to go laugh so hard you disconnected.
it's bad. Or or the one where Ren, Shinji, and Kitaoka are trying to like get this lady into this lady's apartment to figure out what the fuck is going on, and they're both like selling shit, and Kitaoka just shows up and is like, "Yeah, if you need a lawyer, call me."
and like and like with the whole premise for this series, like because I was still new to Rider and used to like a lot of Western shows and such, I was expecting a stereotypical ending of like, oh, they solve the problem and don't resolve the fight, like they whatever. But like no, everyone dies and there's a winner, and that's
Oh
like
yeah.
a really solid ending.
Uh,
Oh dear.
but you know what?
Yeah.
I think that kind of what I really don't like about Ryuki is the because the world got reset. Uh, Not that it is a bad ending, because there was still an inherent sadness that the reason why everything is fine is because Kanzaki and Yui are both gone permanently, because they died because they got killed by the parents basically. So that dark
Yeah.
ending of Ryuki was a really good thing, but still I didn't feel like the ending had enough consequence because there was no memory. There was
Yeah.
no one to remember.
I know exactly what you mean, but you have to remember it's Kamen Rider, especially like the final episodes of all Rider shows are happy endings. Even though like they build up to being sad, they're all happy for the most.
Blade Fives and Build Ish.
Right, yeah. So that's the thing. They are exceptions. Well, that's not the build. They get a whole new world. Everybody loves. Um,
I mean, if you don't count the movies, because generally I don't, like, that comes after the series, because
okay,
most of
fair
them
enough.
are inconsequential, so that's what I mean.
Yeah, but I feel like the build movie was written. I mean, the build ending was written knowing that the movie will continue it. But fair enough. That's a good. Uh, but yeah, like the Feist thing too. Well, the Feist thing is ambiguous because like, well, maybe Takumi lives, or maybe he fucking dies right then and there, right? Like, who knows? Um, well, I guess we know because we've seen like more stuff even after that. But um, at the time, and yeah, you're right. Blade has the ending of the ending where it's like, yeah, holy shit, nobody expected that. But that's the whole thing is like, yeah, that's the whole reason Blade's ending sticks with everyone is because that's the one Rider ending where it's like shit's not all, happy ending. I mean, like Wizard to a smaller extent has that too, where it's like you can't save everyone. But it's like, yeah, Blade is the ending for that. But agreed, like, yeah, it's a little too nicely wrapped up. You do have to remember though that like Kuga Agito and Ryuki did redefine the new era of Rider. Whereas like Kuga is like, hey, Rider is alive again. Agito is like, hey, this shit can be done again. And Ryuki is like, yeah, your ending is too nice. Agito is like, what if more people were actually Riders? Let's show what would happen. And two, then it's like, let's fucking fully break the mold of like, Kamen Rider is just a title, right? Like, they could be other people being Kamen Riders. So it's like, yeah, those three shows really set like the new era and finally got it going. That being said, like, yeah, Ryuki, I will agree, is one of those shows which is pretty decisive. Like, again, every writer versus writer show tends to kind of be like this. Uh, but like the two major ones is like Ryuki and the shitty Ryuki remake. Uh, but some people really like fruit salad, and then some people don't. Um, so the thing with Ryuki is it's the same thing
Okay,
where it's like,
about fruit salad. Okay, here's the thing. Yuki had interesting characters that you wanted to follow. That even if you don't like the main character, everybody else was great.
oh yeah,
Fruit salad didn't have the luxury of that, because it has paper thin
right,
cardboard characters with plot that rings hollow. So yeah.
yeah. I mean, the worst thing is like it had so much more potential because like they were kids turning into adults, whereas Ryuki's they're already adults, so they're like, okay, Ryuki is them just dealing with the regular life shit, whereas like in Gaim it's like, hey, this you get to decide your own destiny and you get to decide the future. So like thematically, there's like so much more to do stuff, but then they don't do anything. Like it turns a little too formulaic. I mean, like they do crazy shit that like normal writer stuff, quote unquote, doesn't do. Whatever. Um, so it did kind of break the mold there a little bit, but like I still like the balance of Ryuki. I still would have preferred more thematic, pushing the boundaries, or like actually exploring it more, as opposed to just being like, hey, we can do crazy shit like Helheim's invading and blah 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 or whatever stuff like that. Like yeah, that got like later on Heisei like Neo Heisei developed that further. Um, but again, like not as good as Ryuki, or some would argue Gaim is better than Ryuki, whatever. Or like Drago's argued, like Ryuki's not as amazing as you would think, and I would agree with that. It all depends on how well you enjoy the characters, and
Yeah,
like I agree.
that's kind of the point of view. I think that okay, I think I'm coming from more perspective of I like I think characters should be stronger than the story,
Okay.
so that so that's where like that's the reason why I don't like Gaim as much as I like Ryuki. Not saying I I don't love Ryuki. That's I like Ryuki. It's a good show. I just don't like the main character. That's the only issue there.
Yeah,
But
I mean, like for me, even personally, I like Ryuki, but for a long time, like Shinji was okay. Well, okay, originally, in the beginning, Shinji's fucking annoying until he started doing his party face thing, which so but um for the longest time, like Goro and Zelda, like Kitawa, were like way more important than Shinji. Well, like Shinji becomes much better later on, like 2/3 of the way. But yeah, like the Asakura still being alive definitely throws a wrench into the thing. But I'm like, right, you're alive because you're popular. I can kind of feel that's why you're sticking around. So I can kind of like pass because at that point I'd seen a lot of writers, so I could kind of see what the fuck was going.
and the
Um,
thing is, I had just started watching Rider back then. I
right.
think I saw Ryuki like I think around after Kugaish. So yeah,
The funny thing with Ryuki is like I think it's the first writer I started watching, but the thing is like Ryuki's first episode is fucking terrible, and then I like immediately stopped. And like a little bit later, I saw Kiva and we finished Kiva, and then I started getting into Rider, and then Decade dropped, and like I fucking hated Decade for what it did to like Kiva and stuff. And then I kind of stopped it, and then like I hated Decade so much, I skipped Double because I'm like I don't want to deal with. And then like O's came out, and O's was great, and then I was back. Um, sorry, go ahead, Rye.
Nah. I think I've said everything that I want to. We've been going for over 3 hours now. I just kind of want to wrap this up.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
agreed. Uh, I don't know, man. Like, okay, call it. What do you want to say? Like, if you would have to recommend, yeah, let's do that. If you had to recommend a writer show for people to get into,
like a
uh,
first Rider series.
a first writer series or something you think is interesting, like, okay, let's go with this. First writer series, if you've never seen anything into writer, first just took a Satsu show that's connected to the writer franchise, but like you're not really into the writer, you just kind of want to see a good show and nothing else. And third one, uh, an experimental writer show if you want to see it. Like you've been into writer, you just kind of want to see something different. What would you recommend?
Okay.
Those.
Okay. So Introduction, just a good show, and experimental. That was the three categories.
Yeah.
Okay, so introductory rider series. I would say uh, probably O's. I think O's is pretty solid as a rider series. I showed it to another friend of mine as his first one, and he really liked it and wanted to watch different riders, but he couldn't find another one that he liked. Uh, just a good show. Possibly Deno if you like something more lighthearted and comedic, and then experimental. Um, either
Well, I mean,
uh,
I'm just saying experimental because like whole show doesn't have to be good. It's just like, well, it had interesting things going for
yeah,
it.
I'm gonna say for experimental, I'm gonna say Fives with the drama aspect of it. Like Fives is pretty solid all around.
Okay. For me, I think the list is my list is the same as Rye, but I think I'll just go with a different one. Uh, Double for introduction, because I showed that to a friend and he really liked it, and he really wanted to watch more. Then for just watching a good show, I would recommend Kuga or Build, either one of those. Because and then experimental, I would say wait, Amazons. Yep.
Okay, those are pretty damn solid, honestly. Yeah, if I had to pick, I'd say first show, O's. Basically, it's really solid. It's fun, and it's got like the new, like it's got a really good version of the new Rider formula going for it. As for just a really solid show, like if you had to watch one Rider show, it'd be Kuga. I mean, it would depend. Like, if you could stomach the older effects and stuff, sure.
That's why I say Kuga and Build, because if a person isn't bothered by the old effects and the slow pacing, Kuga is fine. Kuga is the best show I can give them. But if they are bothered by that, then I would just give them.
Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, mine basically would still be Kuga. I mean, like most people could get through it, and then like finally like experimental. I would say like Kabuto. I know it's like a weird pick because it's not on our list, but it's like well, it was gonna be the Hibiki or Kabuto, but like we kind of discussed Hibiki and why it's different and interesting. But like Kabuto, we haven't really talked about. The thing with Kabuto is it's literally kitchen sink Kamen Rider. Like literally fucking everything you can think of is in Kabuto. Like there's just too much going on in Kabuto, and that's its problem. Right? Tendo's kind of an asshole. You're just gonna have to deal with that. But the whole point of like the experimental shit is like, who cares about Tendo, right? Like he's okay or whatever. But fights wise, really interesting fights, really interesting suits, very different types of writers. Uh, like comedy style is all over the place. Sometimes it's like normal fun, sometimes like almost parody level of stuff going on. Um,
Okay, I was gonna say, okay, what is the one slash two episode you would recommend to a person who has never seen Kamen Rider, just off the bat?
oh, off the bat. Um, shit, I would have to think about this. Give me one moment.
I would say actually an episode of Drive I just watched earlier, where Shinosuke, his identity as Drive is a secret, but he's put in this situation where all these people around him are being attacked by a monster. It's at a hospital, and like he makes the call to like, I don't care if people find out it's me. I need to protect these civilians, and he transforms in front of them in public.
Uh, Mine would be the Dark Kitchen arc of Kabuto, the two episodes where Kabuto fights.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, well, two-parter. This is coming up. Uh, yeah, yeah.
Oh.
It's so damn good. It's so fucking legendary. I wonder if people forgot, but like we keep bringing it back, so people have to remember. It's
Actually,
too good
uh,
to not.
to
Go.
pick a second one, the episode of Fives where you find out Kaido's backstory as a musician and that whole
Oh
thing.
god, so good. Yeah. Shit. There's like so many. Man, if I had to pick like a mini arc, it would kind of be like the like superpowered group in Agito, but that's kind of a little long. But um, let me think. I would say, oh man, like the one where like okay, a little kind of like fun but very Kamen Rider ish two-parter is like the one where Beast grandma comes to visit
Yeah.
and like they have to deal with the whole fact of like shit, Beast actually needs to consume phantoms to live, and she's like, well, I mean, if my grandson needs to live, like I'm willing to sacrifice myself. Like it's so good. Plus they use the powers really, really fucking smartly in that one. Um, you figure out like yeah, like the Beast driver is old, so I can't use the new tech, stuff like that. Magical girl, magical girl Beast. Oh man, holy shit, that's so good. Um, dude,
I just
that is
remember
such
the
a good.
magical girl beast, and I just started laughing at the background.
I know it's so good. I love how like she goes up to Koyomi later on. It's like, oh, were you magical girl Beast? Thanks for your help. And Koyomi's like, what the hell are you talking?
Like,
Anyway,
the hell is that?
it's so good. Um, yeah,
Alright.
I mean, let's think of some more.
I
Uh,
actually think we should wrap this up.
Let's just make this into another episode sometime later,
okay, yeah,
if we don't have much to talk about.
Because this is
sure,
almost 3.5 hours.
Yeah, we should stop.
yeah.
So,
So again, mine would be O's as your introduction. Good writer show would be Kuga, and experimental with Kabuto.
Hmm. Okay, that's fine. Fair enough.
alright, so thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. Uh, I believe next week is also an off week for this show's. I think it's the last one, maybe.
Maybe.
So
I
once
mean, we
again,
have to
we'll.
check out. Yeah, we have to check out the President special too. I'm thinking it's just
I.
a clip show.
It's pretty much just a clip show. Like that's what Vashi
Um,
told me at least, that there was nothing new in the first one at least, so I don't expect there to be anything new in the second one.
I wonder if we should do like maybe should something considering it's online now, but we'll talk about it.
But yeah. So we'll figure out what we're doing next week. So we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.